Have you ever sat and dreamed of an island getaway? Tranquil waves and white sand beaches, drinking smoothies from pineapple cups, maybe even a 5-star resort with comfy beds and delicious food. Sounds like paradise, right? Well, this trip is anything but a vacation for the contestants in our next cartoon. You guessed it. In this episode, we will be covering Total Drama Island. Now, bear with me for a second because it's about to become showception. Total Drama Island is a reality show within a cartoon that parodies popular reality television shows such as Survivor, Big Brother, or Fear Factor. Created by Tom McGillis and Jennifer Persh, who you may or may not recognize from their other masterpiece 16, Total Drama Island first aired in Canada on July 8, 2007, but didn't hit US televisions until nearly a year later on June 5th, 2008. Here, it became only the third show to be given a TV PG rating. This is likely because the show features extremely dangerous stunts like 1,000-foot cliff dives into shark-infested waters, or gruesomely disgusting challenges like the Brunch of Disgustingness. Ew. And way too many blurs of Owen's butt. Bigger ew. Despite the rating, or maybe because of it, the show proved immensely popular, running for 6 more seasons, spawning 2 spin-offs, and multiple nominations, even winning 2010's Kidscreen Awards for Best Animated Series and Viewer's Choice. So buckle up, and don't forget to like and subscribe as we take a walk up the dock of shame into Camp Wawanakwa to find out who wins the ultimate prize on Total Drama Island. By the way, that charismatic host with the most is Chris McLean, one of the few adults on the island. Very vain and narcissistic, Chris only cares about 2 things: ratings and money. He is willing to do anything to the campers if it means more viewers. With his cameraman and production crew, Chris quote-unquote supervises the 22 teenage campers with his best friend, Chef Hatchet. Supposedly ex-military turned chef, Chef Hatchet doubles as, and get ready for all this, an intern, a ballerina, a drill sergeant, a water gun manhunter, a nurse, game show hostess, a dodgeball referee, a sheep, a spider, a pilot, a stewardess, and a mass murderer, just to name a few. Wait, what was that last one? Episode 1 opens with our gracious host, Chris, monologuing an introduction to the premise of the show. 22 teenage campers must go through various challenges each week while staying away at Camp Wawanakwa, an island situated, somewhere in Muskoka, Ontario. Following every challenge, the contestants will undergo the illustrious bonfire ceremony. Here, Chris hands out marshmallows to each camper voted as safe. The camper who does not receive a marshmallow must take a walk down the dock of shame, take a ride off the island on the boat of losers, and thereby being eliminated from the contest. This will go on until there is 1 camper left standing, who will receive a cash prize of $100,000. Cha-ching! Speaking of these campers, let's meet them. First to arrive is Beth, the kind, albeit a bit awkward nerdy girl. She runs up the dock, hugging the reality star Chris McLean, yet subtly insulting how different he looks in real life.
Oh, you're much shorter in real life.
Strong first impression there, Beth. Next is DJ, characterized as the brick house with heart. Thanks to his large stature but soft-hearted nature, his disappointment sets in quickly as Camp Wawanakwa isn't exactly the 5-star resort everyone was promised. Man, I don't think this place even gets half a star. Following is Gwen, the moody goth girl, who refuses to stay. She nearly leaves the island immediately at the mere sight of it. Then comes the lovable cowboy skater dude, Jeff. Despite the filthy camp, Jeff doesn't seem bothered in the slightest. He's just excited to be there, man.
They say man one more time, I'm gonna puke.
Right, sorry Gwen, we just love Jeff's energy. Next up is Lindsay, who has a hard time remembering who Chris is. She's, not the brightest. Following is Heather, who strikes fear in the hearts of the other campers upon setting foot on the dock. And Beth offers yet another fantastic first impression. Duncan comes in next, a juvenile delinquent who accepts this camp as at least better than juvie. Crashing on the scene next is Tyler, the jock who is probably a little too confident in his water skiing abilities as he flies into the luggage on the dock, soaking Heather in the process. Yikes, she does not look happy. Arriving quietly with a disgruntled sigh is Harold, who finds the rundown nature of the camp to be more to his advantage. Next up is the guitar-strumming, Buzz Lightyear-chinned, cool guy, Trent. And nearly immediately, sparks begin to fly between Trent and Gwen. Then we have Bridget, the chill surfer chick, who nearly takes everyone's heads off with her surfboard. Not on day one, Bridget. Noah, the smug bookworm, arrives, unimpressed by the camp, concerned about his life-threatening allergies, to which Chris shows little care. Lashana arrives as confident as ever, letting the other campers know she means business. Harold makes some less than flattering comments. DJ and Bridget hold her back from Harold, who's giving his best Crane impression. Geez, these two certainly won't get along. The ruckus settles as Katie and Sadie, the two BFFFLs, arrive, who seem oddly excited at the sight of the camp. Quite the charmer, I know. Chris offers Ezekiel some simple advice to not say much to avoid getting kicked off early. Then we have Cody, who seems to be more excited about the ladies in camp than the cash prize. Lashana shuts down Cody's flirting immediately as hot-tempered Eva fiercely stomps onto the dock, dropping her luggage of dumbbells on Cody's foot. Soon after, the fun-loving and farting teddy bear Owen arrives on the dock, who is absolutely ecstatic to be there, nearly crushing Chris with a massive bear hug. Courtney, the former CIT, that's counselor in training, arrives with a polite hello to the other campers that gets cut short as Justin arrives, hypnotizing everyone with his insanely good looks. And finally, the maniacal Izzy trips onto the dock in a way that makes even Tyler cringe. Ouch. With the entire cast and campers present and accounted for, Chris calls for a group photo at the end of the dock. Looking great, you guys. Everyone gathers around the fire pit, and Chris gives the campers a rundown of the show again and discusses living arrangements. Harold's off to a rocky start with Duncan. Lindsay already forgets Chris's name and calling him Kyle, but most importantly, two teams are established. The Screaming Gophers, consisting of Gwen, Trent, Heather, Cody, Lindsay, Beth, Katie, Owen, Lashana, Justin, and Noah. And the Killer Bass, with Jeff, Bridget, DJ, Tyler, Sadie, Izzy, Courtney, Ezekiel, Duncan, Ava, and Harold. After splitting everyone up, Chris reiterates the basis of the show and makes it clear this is a reality show. He points out the cameras that can be found littered throughout the island that watch the campers' every move. He then introduces the not-so-glamorous confessional stall, an outhouse with a camera rigged to the door where campers can give their innermost thoughts to the viewing audience in a more private manner. I hope that's all they use that stall for. Now that the campers have been properly oriented, Chris shows them to the cabins where they'll be staying throughout the competition. While getting settled in, Heather grows even more displeased with her sleeping arrangements. Cody strikes out again. Lindsay learns the word communal. Chris and Jeff reiterate that yes, these teens are on their own out here. The campers all freak out over a little cockroach, and Lindsay finds herself enamored by Tyler. In the main lodge, Chef Hatchet establishes the no-nonsense atmosphere in his kitchen, and the campers have their first taste of Chef's gourmet cuisine. Okay, that's downright nasty. Okay, so that was a lot of information, but it's important to know who's who on Total Drama Island, especially because the first challenge and first elimination are coming in the very next episode. As is the case with all coming episodes, episode 2, Not So Happy Campers, opens with a recap of the previous episode, really driving home the reality show within a cartoon thing. From here, the episode picks up right where episode 1 left off, with all 22 campers and Chris standing atop a massive cliff in swimsuits. I don't think I like where this is going. Chris explains their very first challenge. The campers must jump off the 1,000-foot cliff into the lake below. The waters are infested with sharks. But not just any sharks. These are psychotic man-eating sharks, according to Chris. At least they don't have laser beams attached to their freaking heads. There's a safe zone marked for the campers that may or may not be shark-free. And that's not all. After making the jump, the campers must carry back crates to the campsite and build a hot tub that will be judged by Chris. The team with the best tub gets, drumroll please, to use the hot tub. Awesome. The team with the worst of the 2 hot tubs will be sending someone home in the very first bonfire ceremony. The Killer Bass are up first, and the danger of this task really sets over everyone as Bridget looks over the edge. Owen tries to set everyone's minds at ease, saying that reality shows like Total Drama Island always test out the stunts before making the contestants do it.
We need to test the stunts first. You know that.
Do I look like an intern?
Cut to Chef Hatchet making the jump, but getting run out of the water by the sharks. Hey, he survived, so surely the stunt is safe. Bridget hypes herself up to make the first jump and lands successfully in the safe zone gracefully, followed by Tyler, who also makes it into the safe zone, less gracefully. Jeff, Ava, and Duncan follow closely behind, but DJ finds himself too afraid to make the dive and has to put on the dreaded chicken hat for the rest of the day to signify he couldn't make the jump. Ezekiel and Harold jump next, racking up a few bruises that even the sharks cringe at. Courtney willingly takes the chicken hat to avoid the jump, confident that the Screaming Gophers won't be able to beat them in the contest. Risky play, Courtney. Hope it pays off. Sadie refuses to jump without Katie, resulting in a mix-up of the teams. Katie gets moves to Killer Bass, and Izzy switches over to the Screaming Gophers. Katie and Sadie then run to the cliff and successfully land in the safe zone. Quick recap for the Killer Bass. Successfully jumping was Bridget, Tyler, Ava, Jeff, Duncan, Ezekiel, Harold, Katie, and Sadie with 2 chickens, DJ and Courtney. Chris reveals that if the Screaming Gophers can beat that, meaning 10 Gophers jump, then they will be given push carts to take their supplies back to camp. So let's see how they do. Heather refuses to jump for the sake of keeping her hair dry on national television. Quite the team player, I know. Lashana, not one to lose a challenge for Heather's vanity, grabs Heather and chucks her over the cliff, thankfully into the safe zone. Following Heather's descent, Lashana takes the plunge. Then Lindsay, Gwen, Cody, Izzy, and Justin. Despite the glamorous form in his dive, Justin lands outside of the safe zone, where the sharks begin their hunt. However, they are cut short by Justin's irresistible beauty, and instead of eating him, cart him back to shore safely. Beth chickens out, mocked by the rest of the team. Trent takes the plunge next, and that leaves only one, Owen. Tensions are high in this do-or-die moment, as this final jump is the deciding factor in which team wins the challenge. All eyes are on Owen as he prepares himself for the jump, and with a scream, Owen charges the side of the cliff, leaping with, grace. He lands with a massive belly flop that sends waves across the entire lake, leaving everyone looking like they've just been shipwrecked. But he made it, albeit with one less pair of shorts, and the Screaming Gophers are declared the winners.
The Screaming Gophers!
Now, that was just the first half of the challenge. These campers, having just risked their lives, must now take crates of supplies back to camp and construct the most epic hot tub they can in order to successfully win the whole challenge. The Screaming Gophers, winning in the cliff dive, travel back with little issue, while the Killer Bass run into some problems as they carry these massive crates by hand. Tensions grow between Ava and Courtney as her calculated risk did not pay off. Katie and Sadie find themselves overly itchy as they use the bathroom on a patch of poison ivy, and Courtney receives a major bite on her eye. Ugh. Back at camp, the Killer Bass are ready to begin construction on their hot tub, but must first open the crates using only their teeth. After somehow opening their crates, the Bass get ready to start on their hot tub. Heather and Lashana make amends, kind of, and Lindsay gets a friend. While the Bass are well on their way to the best hot tub ever, the Gophers finally arrive without Katie and Sadie and with broken spirits. Jeff and Courtney find a way to rally everyone together to win the challenge, and with Courtney's CIT experience, she elects herself to be leader. Let's see how that goes. With both hot tubs completed, all that's left is for Chris to determine the winner of the challenge. And in a landslide, the Screaming Gophers win, giving themselves an epic hot tub party, as well as safety from elimination that night. An event worth celebrating. Looks like Owen never found his shorts. Ew. The Killer Bass, on the other hand, will be sending someone down to the dock of shame. Back in the main lodge, the Killer Bass discuss who will be getting eliminated that night, with Duncan pointing directly to the CIT Courtney, who tries her best to direct attention to Tyler. Lindsay's not a fan of that idea, to put it bluntly. Duncan is dead set that Courtney should be the one to leave, and Jeff steps in to calm things down. But it's looking like Courtney's the one that will be leaving the island. That is, until Ezekiel decides to let his opinion on women be known, angering the whole team. Shoulda listened to Chris, man. Finally, at the campfire ceremony, Chris hands out marshmallows to Jeff, Tyler, Katie, Bridget, DJ, Harold, Sadie, and Duncan, leaving Courtney and Ezekiel. Chris makes sure to let the anticipation build for probably a little too long, before finally calling on Courtney, meaning Ezekiel is the first to leave Total Drama Island. The Screaming Gophers enjoy their hot tub party as Courtney gives a chilling promise to the camera crew as day 1 ends in Camp Wawanakwa. Episode 3's primary challenge revolves around sleep. or rather, a lack of sleep. This time around, the campers must all remain awake for as long as possible, with the final camper standing winning immunity for their team. Of course, with Chris in charge, it's not gonna be that simple. The campers are jolted awake, bright and early at 7 in the morning for a 20-kilometer run. Ava nearly bites Cody's hands and Chris's head off in her fit of rage, a personality trait Courtney feels she needs to get a handle on. The campers embark on their marathon, except for Heather, who refuses to run, so she walks, Owen, who can't catch his breath, as well as a few others. Back at the lodge, a few of the campers are relaxing, as everyone else joins them. Under the impression that the marathon was the challenge, Courtney grows upset with Harold and Gwen and thinks the Gophers won. Of course, this isn't the challenge. And Chris, in a rare moment of generosity, offers the campers the greatest buffet ever. Much to Owen's delight, it's only after all the campers are full from the massive buffet that Chris finally reveals the real challenge of the day, the Awake-a-thon. Back at camp, and 12 hours into the challenge, all campers remain standing, except for Owen, who passes out moments later. As the challenge goes on, Heather reveals her devious plan to manipulate two campers into an alliance to get her to the final. Those other two campers being Beth and Lindsay. Gwen and Trent hit it off. Heather tries to stamp out the relationship forming between Tyler and Lindsay for the sake of her newly formed alliance. Ava leaves for the bathroom, dropping her MP3 player, leaving it open for Heather to use against her. Man, Heather's serious about winning this competition. 24 hours into the Awake-a-thon, Bridget, Izzy, and Noah have been eliminated, and Chris kicks things up a notch by reading incredibly boring fairy tales, while Sheep Hatchet plays soft melodies on the harp. Sheep Hatchet then goes on to put on the greatest performance of the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy I think I've ever seen. With his magic sleeping dust, DJ falls from his tree of solitude into sweet slumber. At 40 hours on the Gopher side, Lashana has already been eliminated, Courtney reveals her plan to stay awake by always moving, and Heather tries to talk strategy with Beth and Lindsay as they fall asleep. Trent and Gwen seem to have found their stride in the Awake-a-thon by simply talking to each other and looking at the stars to stay awake. Owen, yet again naked, goes on a sleepy time adventure, reliving his cliff dive from the first episode. Apparently, baked beans make the big guy sleepwalk, an odd side effect. For the killer bass, Katie and Sadie have been eliminated together. At the 51-hour mark, Justin's painted eyelid charade gets him eliminated, and Owen shows why he should probably be on the killer bass. A day and a half passes, bringing us to 85 hours straight of no sleep for Duncan, Trent, Heather, Gwen, and Ava. Chris introduces another hurdle for staying awake by reading the history of Canada, knocking out Ava, Heather, and Trent. And finally, Duncan can't go on as he falls asleep during a bathroom break, crowning Gwen as the winner of the Awake-a-thon, meaning yet another win for the Screaming Gophers. Back at camp, Ava throws a fit as she searches for her MP3 player, destroying the cabins and threatening her team until Heather brings it back, pretending she just found it. Devious. Ava has her MP3 player now, but played right into Heather's plan to turn the bass against one another. At the campfire ceremony, the deciding marshmallow is stuck between Ava and Harold. Chris builds anticipation, because views, and the final marshmallow goes to Harold. On the Boat of Losers, Ava lets her opinion be known that the killer bass just eliminated their strongest team member, and she may be right, just as Heather intended. Finally, Courtney and the killer bass raise a toast to stay away from the campfire ceremony next time. Oh, and Owen, still sleeping, finds himself with the fabled Sasquatchanakwa. Episode 4's challenge is a simple one. Dodgeball. The campers will participate in a dodgeball tournament, with the winners getting immunity. In the main lodge, Duncan is in a foul mood thanks to the Awake-a-thon and Harold's persistent snoring. Someone drew a mustache on Harold's face. Heather reiterates the rules for her alliance. Gwen can hardly stand after staying awake so long, and the killer bass find themselves worried that eliminating Ava was a mistake. Now enough drama. It's time for dodgeball! At the dodgeball court, Chris and Ref Hatchet, see what I did there, go over the rules of dodgeball. Noah finds himself incredibly disinterested in the challenges and basically refuses to participate. Tyler proves his athletic ability by hitting basically everyone but the opposing team. Harold displays his martial prowess with the shortest throw ever. Heather shows her control over her alliance by pummeling Tyler, which won't be the first time this episode. Lindsay has a hard time remembering the rules. Noah prefers reading over sports. Jeff gets blasted by Owen. And finally, Owen Owen and Cody prove capable forces in the game of Dodgeball. Essentially, the Screaming Gophers cream the Killer Bass for the first 2 games. With the contest being the best of 5, the Killer Bass find themselves again in a sudden death situation. And who knows how to bring it better than anyone else on the Bass? Duncan. But thanks to Harold, Duncan is moody and sleepy. A terrible mix for a guy with attitude like Duncan. He's their last hope though, and realizing if the Bass lose, he's probably the one to go home, Duncan gets into the game. Using strategies he learned in juvie, Duncan leads the Killer Bass to their first win in the tournament. Noah of the Screaming Gophers continues to get under the skin of his teammates as round 4 gets underway. Harold is told to sit out by the Bass while Heather goes looking for Lindsay, dropping a canoe on Tyler in the process. On Heather's return, the Killer Bass have taken yet another round, bringing the score to 2-2. Sudden death for the Gophers now. Game 5 is winner takes all. Both teams play their hardest, save for Noah, of course, in the final round, until it's Harold versus Owen, a surefire 3rd win for the Gophers. That is, until Harold finds his inner Neo, dodging all of Owen's attacks, and at last eliminating him, winning the tournament for the Killer Bass. With the Killer Bass receiving their first victory, the Screaming Gophers have to make their way to the campfire ceremony. Here, Chris hands out marshmallows to everyone but Lindsay and Noah, with the final one going to Lindsay. Noah, still smug as ever, makes his way down to the dock of shame. Episode 5 is all about the campers' hidden talents, as they strive to impress Judge Chef in a talent contest. Each team will choose the 3 campers with the most impressive talents to perform that night, with the best performance winning immunity for their team. Heather takes the leadership role for the Screaming Gophers, while Courtney takes over for the Killer Bass. Heather rejects Owen's alphabet burp despite the approval of her other team members.
A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q.
Katie and Sadie put on their dancing shoes, though are rejected by the Gophers. Tyler fails with his yo-yo. Heather shows off her ballet in an attempt to usurp the throne for most graceful from Chef Hatchet. Unlikely, but Heather's in charge and she has her alliance at her back, so she's in the contest. Izzy hypnotizes Gwen with her snake charming dance. Beth twirls flaming batons unsuccessfully, leading to a fire in the camp. Justin, being a quick thinker, grabs a fire extinguisher, and in the process wins a spot in the talent show. DJ wows the Bass with his twirling skills. Courtney rejects Bridget's handstand, and Harold doesn't even get an opportunity to try and show his talent. Finally, Jeff shows off his sick moves with his skateboard, securing his spot in the contest. So for the Bass, we've got DJ, Jeff, and Courtney performing, and Justin, Trent, and Heather performing for the Gophers. Outside of the challenge, Heather caught wind of the sparks flying between Gwen and Trent and musters up an evil plan. With Lindsay distracting Gwen, Heather goes into the cabin for Gwen's diary. Wonder what she's going to do with that. Back to the stage, the Killer Bass are relaxing and practicing their performances, when Bridget, in an unfortunate handstand accident, drops a stage light on Courtney's violin, meaning someone's gotta replace her. So Bridget's 20-minute handstand has to step up. Finally, it's time for the talent contest. First up is Justin, who shows off his good looks and earns a solid score from Chef. Then comes DJ, unfortunately tangling himself in his ribbon, much to the disappointment of Chef. Trent performs a heartwarming song, not so subtly dedicated to Gwen, and gaining the highest score from Chef so far. Now comes Bridget, and a word of warning, the squeamish may wish to look away for this part. Having eaten way too many chips before the show started, Bridget's 20-minute handstand irks her stomach, leading to a very messy, very disgusting puke fest on stage. A sight so gruesome the campers in the crowd begin to vomit, and the show has to take a short break for cleanup. You know, I think that may be the biggest ew of this season. Finally, the show returns, stage clean and performers ready, and Heather walks on stage in her leotard. However, instead of a ballet, Heather reads directly from Gwen's diary for the world to hear. She just gets meaner and meaner. Following that heartless act, Jeff gets ready to show off his mad skills, but unfortunately breaks his skateboard. It's not a good day to be a Bass. Wow. In his place, Harold does some epic beatboxing to save the show. His performance is given the highest possible score from Chef, and in yet another wild turn of events, Harold wins for the Killer Bass. Again. We know what this means at this point. The Screaming Gophers must eliminate another camper. At the campfire ceremony, it is left between Justin and Heather. Heather's performance even shocked Chris, who was surprised as he hands the final marshmallow to Heather. Hotness just wasn't enough, and Justin is eliminated. Man, that girl Heather is so cruel. I hope she gets what's coming to her. Episode 6 is all about survival. Perhaps the simplest yet scariest challenge so far. The rules are easy. Spend one night in the woods. The first team back the following morning for breakfast wins invincibility. On the way to their camp, Trent tries to talk with an embarrassed Gwen to no avail. On the killer bass side, Sadie and Katie, who love blueberries, fall behind their team when they discover a whole bush of the azure fruit. Once the screaming gophers arrive at their site, the campers soon realize that they will have to forage for their own food, a task Owen takes charge on thanks to his wildlife survival experience, which seems to pay off, as he returns to camp with an entire bundle of fish. As a matter of fact, Owen seems to be the saving grace for his team, setting up the tent, getting the fire lit. Owen's a real survival man. He explains he owes it all to his grandfather, who he would go camping with often. That night, Owen tells a story about a time they took down a monstrous bear, much to Heather's disbelief. Around this time, the campers realize Izzy's nowhere to be found and start yelling out for her, attracting a bear to their campsite. Not to worry, they've got Owen the survival man, right? Yes, a true hero for sure. To escape the bear, Heather directs everyone to climb into the trees, where they wait the bear out. Unfortunately, the branch beneath Lashana breaks, and she falls face to face with the hungry grizzly that is revealed to be Izzy in disguise. It was just a prank. After things settle down, the campers sit for their fish dinner around the campfire, and yet another bear shows up. The campers are convinced it's just another prank. Owen tries to pull the mask off, but it is, in fact, an actual bear, driving the campers back up the tree for the night. At the Bass campsite, things seem to be going smoothly enough as they set everything up. Jeff shows off his not-so-suave flirting skills as he strikes out with Bridget. DJ makes a new friend. Duncan tells a scary story that spooks the whole team. Even Courtney, who runs beneath Duncan's arms for safety. Typical campfire shenanigans, so things seem to be going well. That is, until it's time for bed. Bridget, terrified of being in the woods at night, finds the courage to leave the tent for a bathroom break. She's swarmed by bats and loses her footing, kicking an ember at the tent, burning it down in the process. Man, that's pretty bad. But at least it's not raining. Yeah, spoke too soon. In their search for their team, Katie and Sadie wander the woods by themselves, and tensions begin to rise between the two best friends. Old arguments flare up, and the two fight, arguing well into the night, resulting in them calling off their best friendship. After realizing they've walked in a large circle, the girls panic and make a run for it, finding shelter in a nearby cave for the night. The next morning, both teams wake up and race back to camp. The killer bass arrive first, and the screaming gophers follow behind. It looks like a win for the bass until Chris points out that they're missing a few campers. Katie and Sadie. Courtney tells Chris that she's sure the two were eaten by wolves in an attempt to save their victory. But moments later, the two former best friends dash onto the scene, clearly not eaten by wolves. After their frightful night, Katie and Sadie make up for their fight and reinstate their bestie status. Things may be good between those two, but with their late arrival, the challenge goes to the screaming gophers, much to the anger of their team. At the campfire ceremony, Chris throws marshmallows out to each member of the bass, except for Katie and Sadie, meaning the inseparable pair will be splitting up. Final marshmallow goes to Sadie, who says she can't go on without her bestie. Katie gives her other half a pep talk and heads off on the boat of losers as Sadie weeps on the dock of shame. This episode is all about the campers conquering their greatest fears and assorted challenges associated with a specific fear designed for a specific camper. The team with the most campers having completed their challenge wins immunity. But how did the producers know the camper's greatest fear? Well, the episode begins immediately following Katie's elimination while the campers are sitting around the main bonfire. After the victory party, the screaming gophers came to join the bass thanks to Owen stinking up the cabin. Beth offers green jello with a gummy worm to Courtney, who rejects, and then to DJ, who sends the dish flying, thinking the gummy worm is a snake. DJ apologizes, revealing that snakes freak him out. Tyler offers sympathy, stating that chickens give him the creeps. This causes all of the campers to begin sharing their worst fears. Gwen explains in the confessional that Beth revealed she's scared of bugs, Harold's afraid of ninjas, and Heather's scared of sumo wrestlers. At the campfire, Gwen tells that she's scared of being buried alive. Lindsay says walking through a minefield in heels. Owen and Izzy both hate flying. Jeff doesn't like hail. Bridget is scared of being left alone in the woods. Trent doesn't like mimes.
And Sadie says bad haircuts, prompting Lindsay to change her answer. Cody says he wouldn't want to defuse a time bomb, and Courtney claims she doesn't have a fear, much to the disbelief of Duncan. When Courtney reverses the question onto Duncan, he reveals he's scared of Celine Dion music store standees? That's certainly an unexpected answer from the tough guy, after revealing all of their fears, except for Lashana, but we'll get to that. Trent insists that Courtney has to be afraid of something, which she again refuses, despite Duncan bringing up his story from the night before that had her terrified. The next morning, Chris reveals the next challenge, calling it Phobia Factor, calling Heather to the theater for sumo, and telling Gwen she has a date with the sand on the beach. Lindsay doesn't understand how he knew all of their fears, having forgotten the fact that there are cameras that are always watching and listening. Chef gets a special meal for Tyler, a fried but somehow alive chicken. Outside, the Gophers gather around an inflatable pool filled with live worms for Beth, who seemingly unbothered dives right in. Katie and Lindsay are given wigs to wear for the day. Owen and Izzy board a rickety-looking airplane piloted by Stewardess Hatchet. While on a bathroom break, Harold finds himself surrounded by ninjas. Ready for the challenge, Harold whips out his nunchucks and twirls them around, striking fear in the ninjas. That is, until he fumbles and knocks himself out, counting as a failed challenge. Though her fear was never explicitly stated, Lashana must have a fear of spiders, because on the campgrounds, Lashana runs off in terror at the sight of Chef dressed up as a spider, failing her challenge. Heather and a sumo wrestler square off on the stage, and as the wrestler charges a cowering Heather, he trips over her, launching himself off the stage. Consider Heather's fear conquered, I guess. Bridget is tasked with 6 hours of solitude in the woods around the camp. Shouldn't be so bad, especially after the last challenge. On the stage, DJ confronts what might be the cutest snake imaginable, yet he's still horrified by it. His team offers their support, and DJ picks up the little guy, claiming victory over his fear.
DJ! See? Fear is only in the mind.
At the beach, Gwen is tasked with being buried inside a glass box for 5 minutes. Trent consoles her by giving her a walkie-talkie and letting her know he'll be there with her the whole time. However, this promise goes short-lived as a mime scares Trent away from the burial site, dropping his walkie-talkie in the process. While Trent runs around the whole camp, Cody has to defuse a live garbage bomb, and Duncan embraces a cardboard cutout of Celine Dion, scoring another point for the Bass. Trent's mad dash ends when he jumps into the lake, forcing the mime to call off the chase. This great escape means another point to the Screaming Gophers. After congratulating Trent on his victory, Chris pulls out a remote control wired to an RC cloud that rains hail. He uses this to pelt Jeff with his greatest fear, hail. While talking with Chris, Trent realizes that they've completely forgotten about Gwen being buried and races over to get her out. While doing so, the two guys hear a loud explosion that even reaches Bridget in the woods, and Chris deduces that Cody must have failed to defuse his bomb. And that he did. Cody, who is severely injured and covered in filth, wanders through the woods to find some help. He finds Bridget, who unfortunately runs off in fear, thinking Cody is some sort of woodland monster. That's one fail Cody, one fail Bridget. But not to worry, because back at the beach, Gwen is perfectly fine, if not a little angry with Trent for leaving her. Regardless, that's another point for the Gophers. A quick score recap shows 4 points to the Gophers thanks to Gwen, Beth, Heather, and Trent, but only 2 points to the Bass from DJ and Duncan. Owen and Izzy make it back to the ground safely, giving the Gophers another 2 points. Lindsay and Sadie make it through the day with their bad haircuts, scoring 1 point for both teams, bringing the score to 7 points Gophers and 3 points Bass. While Tyler cowers in fear in a chicken coop, Cody points out that even if Tyler was successful, there's no way for the Bass to make up the points they need to win, since Tyler and Courtney are the only ones left to compete. Chris decides as a way for the Bass to potentially win, the final challenge for Courtney will be worth triple points. Confused, Courtney points out that she never said what her fear was, but cutting back to the night everyone spoke about what scares them, Courtney's reaction to the green gelatin was enough for the producers to realize what she's scared of. Courtney's final task, similar to the first challenge, involves jumping from a high platform, but this time she must jump into a pool of green jelly. And just like the cliff dive, Courtney backs down, sending the killer Bass to the campfire ceremony. Around the bonfire, Chris holds the final marshmallow that will go to either Courtney, or Tyler. He lets anticipation build, and the final marshmallow goes to Courtney. Tyler heads for the dock of shame, mocked by his teammates, and heads off on the boat of losers. Episode 8 takes the campers away from Camp Wawanakwa to a nearby island, spookily named Bony Island. The episode opens with Chris explaining the challenge to the campers. A simple premise, but physically demanding challenge. The campers must paddle over to Bony Island on their canoes and carry them through the woods to the other side. Upon arriving, the campers must build a rescue fire that will be judged by Chris and then race back over to the main camp. The first team back to the island wins immunity from elimination. Chris then goes on to explain that Bony Island is in fact cursed, and there's a legend that anyone that takes anything off the island will be cursed forever.
A cursed island! Whoa!
After briefing and scaring the campers, Chris tells them to get a move on to the beach to get started. Beth runs over, having been in the bathroom during the explanation, and asks what she missed. Chris summarizes the challenge with the word canoes, but fails to mention the fabled curse of the island. On the beach, the campers decide who to pair up with for their expedition to the other island. Cody uses this as an opportunity to get some time with Gwen, who he has had a crush on for the whole show. Jeff is excited to partner up with Bridget, but finds himself confused when his excitement isn't matched. Instead, he pairs up with DJ, who is terrified of the water. The rest of the campers pair up and begin their trek to Bony Island. On their way, Bridget explains to Courtney the reason for their standoffish nature towards Jeff. According to Bridget, Jeff made a heart-shaped clay bowl, taped 2 torn pictures of them together, and inscribed the gift on the back with, "I hope you think of me whenever you drop loose change into this." Both girls find his profession of love very cheesy, a sentiment also expressed by DJ when Jeff told him of the present. DJ offers Jeff some advice on love in terms of how someone would try and attract a bunny. Love is also in the air on Gwen and Cody's canoe. Well, it is for Cody at least, as he persistently tries to score a date with Gwen, who shuts him down each time. After being hit in the groin with Gwen's paddle, Cody finally catches the hint and lays off, even going so far as to put in a good word for Gwen to Trent. The campers finally arrive on Bony Island, aptly named for its cliffside, shaped like a human skull, and overall spooky atmosphere. The campers run through the forest, dodging spiked tree trunks and skull effigies before being interrupted by a falling tree, halting them in their tracks. Through the brush, Cody sees something move, and eyes peer through the shadows as the carnivorous woolly beavers emerge. The campers run through the wilderness to escape from the monsters. Once they find safety, Owen reveals he has soiled his pants in the chaos, releasing a fart that alerts other nearby monsters. This time, giant geese give chase, only deterred by Cody, who brought a loaf of bread to the island with the intention of a romantic picnic with Gwen. The killer bass pull forward and take a right path at a crossroads, while the screaming gophers take the left path, a decision that quickly proves detrimental as Trent finds himself sinking in a trap set up by Chris. Quicksand. Chris confesses that he did in fact set the trap up, but chuckles, saying he didn't actually expect anyone to fall for it. Lindsay comes to the rescue by launching herself into the quicksand, trapping herself. Cody swings in on a vine to make a grand rescue attempt, but misses Trent's hand and crashes into a tree. Smoother move. The vine swings back above the quicksand, Trent grabs it, allowing him and Lindsay to be pulled out of the trap. The bass, who have taken a strong lead thanks to the quicksand incident, are stopped when Jeff suffers a seriously grievous injury.
You've got to go on without me! Ah!
That's right. Somehow Jeff was able to carry on despite having a splinter in his leg. What a trooper. With Jeff being carried over by DJ and Harold on top of their canoe, the Bass's lead diminishes, and both teams make it back to the beach for the second part of the challenge. Despite being behind, the Bass find themselves at an advantage with the fire building contest, thanks to Duncan's lighter, which Chris points out is totally legal. The Gophers, who have to build their fire the old-fashioned way, go searching for wood, and Beth comes across an old tiki idol in the brush. Having not been warned of the alleged curse of the island, Beth takes it with her. As the fire building continues, Cody makes good on his promise and speaks with Trent about Gwen. Jeff does his best to help his team despite his injury. DJ urges Bridget to check on Jeff thanks to her first aid training, and Harold throws his team's paddles into the fire in hopes of making it larger. As the fire building leg of the challenge comes to a close, Izzy launches a handmade fire starter into her team's fire, creating a massive flume of flame and smoke. Izzy explains that she learned this technique while staying with the reserves when she accidentally blew up the kitchen, an event that the RMCP is still looking to reprimand as they search for Izzy, who, according to her, has gone so totally AWOL. The Screaming Gophers are declared the winners of the fire building thanks to Izzy's antics, and the campers must now make their way back to camp. The killer bass, having no paddles, rely on DJ to push their canoes back by flutter kicking across the lake, an idea given to the bass by Izzy. Thanks to his immense strength and determination, DJ kicks across the lake at lightning speed, and the killer bass make it to the beach before the Screaming Gophers, making them the winners and giving the invincibility. At the campfire ceremony, the final marshmallow is between Izzy and Lindsay. However, before Chris can name the safe camper, a helicopter appears, shining a spotlight on Izzy. The RMCP arrives to take Izzy into custody. She says her goodbyes to the campers before running off maniacally that they will never take her alive. No one walks down the dock of shame or boards the boat of losers, but Izzy is thereby eliminated from the contest. Episode 9 sees the two teams compete in a paintball competition with a woodland twist. Each team splits into two categories, hunters and deer. The hunters hunt the deer, and the team with the most hits on the opposing team wins. Simple enough, right? Well, with these campers, things are usually far from simple. The episode opens with Chris jolting the campers awake by arriving in a loud helicopter. Heather begins her morning by bossing around her alliance and holding up the line for the washroom, proving to be quite the thorn in her fellow campers' sides. Chris gathers the campers around the fire pit to give them the rundown of the day's challenge and divide the teams. For the killer bass, Harold, Jeff, and Bridget are the hunters, leaving Courtney, DJ, Duncan, and Sadie as deer. On the gopher side, Owen, Lashana, and Lindsay are the hunters, while Heather, Gwen, Trent, and Beth are the deer. As the challenge is set to begin, the deer are given a head start and make their way into the woods. For the bass, DJ embraces his inner deer, prancing off on all fours. And on the gopher side, Cody seems to be the only one glad to be a deer, while Heather once again pushes her alliance around, saying that Lindsay and Beth are to protect her through the whole thing. The hunters are set to begin their hunt. Bridget seems a little unsure, but is motivated by the fact that Heather is a deer. Beth finds herself very excited to start, and Owen takes the challenge a bit too seriously, dousing himself in urine. Beth and Lindsay make their way through the woods together, with no luck finding any deer until they come across an annoyed Heather. Putting her bossy nature on full display, Heather sends them on a hunt for food for her, telling Lindsay to go get berries and Beth to grab some chips from the dining hall. In a confessional, Beth begins to show her annoyance with Heather and the whole alliance. Owen monologues to himself while traversing the forest and comes across DJ, who has fully embraced his role as a deer, eating grass. Owen hides in a nearby bush, waiting for his perfect moment, when he is scared by a snake, alerting DJ to his presence, and the chase begins between the two. The hunt runs across the whole of the island, even leading them to the high cliff from the first challenge. Having wasted all his ammo in pursuit, Owen finds himself at DJ's mercy atop this cliff. For the third time in the competition, Owen takes the plunge into the lake below. All the while, Beth's hunt for chips proves difficult thanks to Chef's presence in the lodge. She finds an opportunity to sneak into the kitchen while Chef walks out, seemingly going for a swim. Just as she secured her package, Chef returns, and Beth does her best to not make a sound, but drops her idol and steps on a creaky board, alerting Chef that there may be an intruder. Beth narrowly escapes, and as she's running through the woods, comes to the realization that she's putting her life on the line for Heather of all people. As she returns with the opened bag, Heather orders her to get a new one. For the first time, Beth stands up for herself, saying no. Beth walks away to complete the challenge, as Heather takes the first hit of the game from Bridget. An angry Heather calls an alliance meeting with both Lindsay and Beth. Heather says Beth can come back to the alliance if she apologizes, but Beth refuses and tells Heather off, stating that she is more concerned with bossing people around than actually winning. Their argument flares up, catching Lashana's attention, who accidentally shoots Heather, followed by Beth shooting her as well. Beyond angry, Heather takes Lindsay's paintball gun, and the three of them all begin shooting at one another, covering each of them in their own team's paint. Owen, now soaking wet, has emerged from the lake with a newfound target, Duncan. He trails behind him, even climbing a tree to remain out of sight. But before he can release his shot, Owen gives himself up again by farting.
Beans.
While Owen has been on the chase and Heather's alliance has been falling apart, Cody has been wandering the woods with a bag of chips Heather declined, leaving a trail of crumbs behind him. Eventually, Cody came across the pile of blueberries left behind by Lindsay, and as he bent down to eat them, a massive grizzly with crumbs on his face growled at him. Yikes. I guess now we know why Cody has been in a full body cast in his confessionals. Duncan, still fleeing from Owen, runs into Courtney, literally. The two, arguing over directions, crash into one another and in the process, interlock their antler hats. In his confessional, Duncan admits that yes, they could have taken off the hats, but kinda enjoyed being trapped with Courtney. As if things couldn't get worse for the Gophers, the hunters from the Bass find the other team in their chaos and add to it by shooting at them as well. As Heather, Beth, and Lashana are doused in both teams' paint, Chris calls over the PA system to have everyone return to camp. Outside the medical tent, Chris goes over the absolute chaos of the challenge, saying it was awesome and makes for great TV. Given that the Gophers are covered in both teams' paint and not a single bass was hit, Chris declares the killer bass the winners, and the Gophers have to vote someone out. At the campfire ceremony, Heather is confident Beth is getting voted out, and Cody finds himself confident that he's safe. However, in the confessional, it's revealed the majority of the team voted for Cody due to his injury, believing he'll be more of a detriment to the team in this condition. In the end, Cody is the one voted out. Everyone says their goodbyes, as Beth wheels him down the dock of shame. Here, Beth shows Cody the good luck charm she found on Bony Island, the Tiki Idol. Beth gives Cody a kiss on the cheek, causes his wheelchair to roll off the dock of shame and into the water. Don't worry, he's okay. I think. Episode 10 doesn't take the campers into the woods or to some far-off island. Instead, they are taken to the kitchen to prove their cooking skills to Chris. Things start off smelly in the boys' cabin. As Duncan wakes up for his morning exercise, he is greeted by the unsightly image of Harold's dirty underpants only inches from his face. When confronted, Harold vehemently denies the accusation, despite his name being stitched onto the label. Annoyed with Harold's stubborn and unsanitary ways, Duncan and the others in the boys' cabin, DJ and Jeff, decide today that they will teach Harold a lesson. On the beach of camp, Chris has gathered the campers to explain the day's challenge, a simple cooking challenge. Each team will assign a chef for their team to lead them in preparation for a 3-course meal that will be judged by Chris. Jeff sees the spread of ingredients and immediately has a vision for an Italian-themed dining experience, earning his role as lead chef for the killer bass. For the Screaming Gophers, the role is taken over by Heather, who immediately called dibs on the position. In the kitchen, Jeff tells everyone to divide themselves into pairs for each course of the meal. Bridget pairs with DJ, Sadie pairs with Harold, leaving Courtney to pair with Duncan, something she claims to be incredibly upset about in her confessional, where she talks endlessly about Duncan. Yes, she's definitely not into this guy, right? After getting his team divided, Jeff returns to the boys' cabin, cautiously collects Harold's crusty underwear, cooking up some sort of prank. Upon his return, he signals to DJ, who spills water on Harold in order to make him return to the cabin for a change of clothes. I wonder what the boys are up to. While Harold makes his way back, the Gophers enter the kitchen, being directed by Heather. She splits the team similarly to the Bass, assigning 2 to each course of the meal. But her ideas are questioned by Lashana, who thinks her strengths would be more beneficial if used differently. Back at the cabins, Harold discovers Jeff's thievery, as he's left with only 1 pair of tiny undies to wear for the rest of the challenge. Things continue to prove difficult for the Gophers as Owen returns to the truck for another crate of oranges. The fruit attracts a hive of bees that viciously attack him, leaving welts all over his body. Upon his return to the kitchen, Owen excitedly throws the crate of oranges to his team, knocking Trent out in the process, thereby removing him from the challenge for the day. On the Bass side, things seem to be going well enough, and Jeff takes this as an opportunity to make small talk with his crush, Bridget, at DJ's urging. However, he fails miserably, comparing Bridget to his friend's hot mom, prompting DJ to remove Jeff completely. Yikes, Jeff, not the most flattering comment. Harold returns to the kitchen in his Speedo, much to Chris's aversion, but to the guy's amusement. On the other side of the kitchen, head chef Heather pushes her team around some more, much to the anger of Lashana, who challenges Heather's bossy ways. When Heather brushes off Lashana's allergic reaction to pineapple, telling her to get back to work, it takes 3 of the Gophers to hold her back. Harold's torment continues as the guys tell him to return to the cabin for a pair of shorts and undies, but as he puts them on, he finds out that they doused them in hot sauce and in a panic runs for the lake to cool off. Oh, poor Harold. He just can't seem to catch a break from these guys. The Gophers finally have enough of Heather's disrespect when she calls her team morons after searing off her own eyebrows lighting the flambe. When Owen returns with Heather's makeup bag, after another run-in with the bees, the girls snatch it and throw it into the walk-in freezer, locking Heather in with it. Wow, she seems angrier than ever. On the bath side, a dejected Harold returns in his pajamas. Yet despite all the pranks inflicted by Duncan, DJ, and Jeff, Harold still refuses to admit fault for the dirty underwear in the cabin. His stubbornness prompts Jeff to offer sandwiches to the team, which Harold takes, and to his horror, finds a pair of his underwear inside it. Jeff explains they'll return his clothes if Harold will simply take responsibility for the mess he left in the cabin. Meanwhile, Duncan and Courtney finish up their desserts and Courtney lets out her rebellious side. When Duncan says Courtney's too stuck up, she proves she can be a laid-back rule breaker when she throws a batch of custard at him with a giggle. In his confessional, Duncan reveals that Courtney really gets on his nerves, but he actually likes that in a girl. But Courtney strongly denies that the two of them would ever happen. With both meals and all courses finished, it's time for Chris to judge the food. Jeff and Beth set the table. Notably, Beth uses her tiki as a decor piece. Meanwhile, the Gophers leave Owen to guard the food. But knowing Owen, that won't go well. Chris tries the Bass's dishes, which pass with flying colors. When it's time for the Gophers to respond, Ashana discovers Owen ate almost the entire rack of ribs. Still, the tiny bit that Chris had was enough to score 2 points. Finally, for the final course, Duncan and Courtney's desserts prove mediocre, earning only 6 points. But Gwen and Lindsay's flambe nearly kills Chris. It's at this moment that Lindsay remembers they left Heather in the walk-in and goes to let her out. Seconds later, a very angry and very blue Heather emerges, as Chris tells the Gophers their meal was a disaster. Heather angrily points out the tiki idol on the table, and Beth finally reveals she brought it back from Bony Island. Chris explains that she shouldn't have taken it before proceeding with the challenge, rewarding the Bass with a 5-star meal under the stars and sending the Gophers to the campfire ceremony again. At the ceremony, Heather finds herself in the bottom 2 once again, this time with Beth. Ultimately, final marshmallow goes to Heather, thanks to the fact that Beth presumably cursed the team with the tiki idol from Bony Island. Beth takes her walk down the dock of shame and towards the boat of losers. However, just before the episode ends, Harold finally admits fault for the underwear incident after the guys take his mattress to the dock. In the morning, Harold bears it all to the girls and the cameraman, takes responsibility, and runs back to the cabin with his clothes. Episode 11 is all about building trust. As you may have noticed, there have been many sparks flying among some of the campers. There have also been many flames of hatred burning between a few of them too, so this challenge may prove interesting. The episode opens in the main lodge, with Chef serving the leftovers from the previous episode's challenge. Heather expresses the after effects as well as her anger over the last challenge's antics, and Courtney skirts around her crush on Duncan with his rebellious actions. On the dock, Chris explains that each team will be broken up into smaller duos for the 3 challenges that will all revolve working with your partner, even if they're your mortal enemy. The first of the 3 challenges is a freehand climb up a cliff face that is trapped with all manner of dangers. For the Bass, DJ and Duncan are paired up, and for the Gophers, it's Gwen and Heather. As the 2 groups set to begin their climb, DJ leaves his pet bunny with Jeff for safekeeping, and Gwen finds herself concerned about an extra second rope attached to her. As the climb gets underway, all seems to be going well, until Gwen falls back from an explosion rigged to the side of the mountain. Heather catches her before she plummets to the bottom, but after being sprayed with habanero pepper sauce by Chris, she loses control of her line, and Gwen falls to the ground. Duncan, on the other hand, is completely unfazed by Chris's attack. Gwen makes her way back up the cliffside, and Heather reveals the true purpose of the second rope. Being attached to Gwen's skirt, Heather tugs on the rope, tearing her pants off and exposing her underwear to DJ and the national viewing audience. Despite the embarrassment, Gwen continues, but DJ, embarrassed to the point of shock, loses grip and falls down the cliffside. The rope attached to the big guy wraps around Duncan, pulling him up like a counterweight, and the 2 Killer Bass members hang in midair, suspended from the cliff. Gwen makes the climb to the top, winning the challenge for the Gophers, albeit at the cost of a little too much exposure on live TV. The next challenge, much like last episode's, is a cooking challenge, but with a deadly twist. The chefs on each team must prepare and cook a fugu blowfish, a potentially poisonous delicacy from the ports of Japan. If prepared incorrectly, consuming the fish could prove fatal. For the bass, Bridget is cooking for Jeff, and Lindsay is cooking for Trent on the gopher side. After Bridget finishes cooking the fugu, she presents a delicious-looking plate of sushi that Jeff puts down without a hitch. Lindsay, on the other hand, presents a mushy plate of fish guts, and when Trent takes a bite, he spasms out, hitting himself in the face and screaming before collapsing to the ground and turning a sickly blue. Chris comes over, saying Trent will be fine in 24 hours, and Chef takes over, administering CPR. Following the cooking challenge, Bridget and Jeff go to the lake for a swim. Before jumping in, Jeff secures DJ's bunny in a safe place atop the lifeguard bench. After swimming for a while, the two look up in horror as Bunny is eaten by a giant snake, which is then caught by an eagle, and then is finally eaten by a freshwater shark. That poor Bunny. How will Jeff explain this one to DJ? In the woods, Chris explains that the third and final challenge will be divvied up into 3 mini blindfolded challenges. The first of which is the William Tell challenge, where campers must shoot an arrow off the head of another camper by slingshotting apples at them. Sadie shoots at Courtney, while Lashana shoots at Owen. Both shooters have difficulty nailing the apple at first, until Lashana scores the point for her team. Sadie, seemingly unaware that the challenge has ended, continues shooting, pelting Courtney, a bear, a seagull, and a Sasquatch in aqua, before being stopped by Chris. The next of the blindfolded challenges is a blind trapeze. The campers must leap from a trapeze into the arms of their teammates swinging by their legs. The catch? The trapeze is set up over a pond of electric jellyfish. Before the challenge begins, DJ asks Jeff where his bunny went, to which Jeff skirts the truth by saying he ran away, saddening DJ. Off to the side, Duncan is seen walking off. Surely the tough, mean guy isn't going to go look for a bunny. Back at the trapeze, blindfolded Bridget holds on to the wooden structure for dear life as Harold swings gracefully back and forth. Full of fear, Bridget finds herself reluctant to jump, places her trust in Harold, and leaps safely into his arms and lands safely on the other side. Heather and Lindsay, on the other hand, are less successful, as Lindsay calls for the jump at the wrong time, leading to Heather's plummet into the electric pond. The final challenge of the day is a blindfolded toboggan race, where each team's driver can't see, and they are guided by a navigator. Gwen and Lashana ride for the Gophers. For the Bass, DJ and Jeff ride together. Although DJ finds himself too depressed about his bunny to focus. As the race begins, Gwen offers Lashana great directions, and the two make their way down the steep hill quickly, almost too quickly, as they fly into the river and down the waterfall. On the way down, Jeff points to Duncan, who found Bunny, prompting DJ to remove his blindfold to see. With renewed motivation, DJ steers professionally, beating Gwen and Lashana. Courtney finds herself taken aback at Duncan's out-of-character kindness to go find a new bunny. Duncan denies the accusation, but eventually confesses so long as Courtney keeps it secret. Following the race, Chris points out that DJ removed his blindfold, therefore disqualifying himself, and the victory for the day goes to the Screaming Gophers. At the campfire ceremony, marshmallows go to everyone but Sadie and Harold. Given Harold's excellent performance in the blind trapeze and Sadie's antics during the William Tell, the final marshmallow goes to Harold. An upset Sadie tells off her team and runs off down the dock of shame and tears. Her sadness is short-lived once she looks to the boat of losers, though, and sees her bestie Katie on board. With a squeal, the two reunite and ride off into the moonlight, ending episode 11. Episode 12 revolves around Chef's military background, as the campers must undergo a number of difficult challenges in his grueling boot camp. The show opens with Harold storming out of the boys' cabin, demanding answers from whoever used his underwear to make underwear. The culprits, Duncan and Jeff, laugh hysterically, and Courtney recoils in disgust. Chef makes an announcement over the PA system, calling all the campers to the dock. Here, all the campers line up and stand at attention, as Chef gives the rundown of the challenge. The campers will endure a series of boot camp-like challenges and will continue to do so until all but one camper drops out. The camper that lasts the longest through Chef's boot camp will win immunity for their team. The first challenge is a test of both strength and endurance. The campers must hold a canoe over their heads, only stopping when someone decides to drop out. Everyone holds the canoe well into the night, until finally, Lindsay loses feeling in her arms, releases, and rings the quitter's bell at the dock. With the first challenge finished, Chef tells everyone to go to the lodge for dinner. In the lodge, Chef gives everyone 10 minutes to eat before the night training is set to begin. And what's for dinner? The scraps and garbage from breakfast. Gross. Courtney and Heather outright deny to eat such a foul meal. Harold is pranked by Duncan and Jeff again when they hand him a glass of apple juice that actually turns out to be kitchen grease. Courtney scolds Duncan for his actions, saying she thought he was nice, a claim that Duncan adamantly denies. After dinner, the campers follow Chef's lead in a dance performance. Sick moves, everyone! The dance continues until Duncan shuts off the music, causing Chef to demand 20 push-ups. With the dance portion abruptly ended, the campers reconvene in the main lodge for Chef's next challenge. The campers must write a 300-word essay about how much they love him. After some time, Trent and DJ have fallen asleep, eliminating themselves. Chef tells the campers to head to sleep and to report back at 5 a.m. Duncan proves a thorn in the side of Drill Sergeant Chef again until Courtney steps in, saving him from further punishment. Early in the next morning, the campers are instructed to navigate an obstacle course in less than a minute. Everyone sets off, vaulting tall wooden walls, crawling through mud, and dodging swinging axes. Harold takes a fall off of a wall straight into the muddy ground below, landing on his face and ingesting too much mud. Chef directs him to the infirmary, and Harold is eliminated from the challenge. Lashana gets stuck in the mud beneath the swinging axes, eliminated from the challenge. Duncan, as sarcastic and rebellious as ever, pushes Chef too far by kissing his nose after being given a punishment. In a controlled rage, Chef orders Duncan to solitary confinement in the boathouse. The rest of the campers return to the main lodge for dinner. Courtney goes to the boathouse to check on Duncan, strictly to make sure he's okay. Definitely not because she likes him.
She likes him.
You're probably right, Jeff. In the boathouse, Courtney and Duncan talk about their two differing personalities, Duncan being the rebellious and defiant rule breaker, and Courtney being the structured and compliant rule follower. Duncan convinces Courtney to join him on the wild side and break a few rules by sneaking into Chef's food supply. The two raid Chef and Chris's fridge for a plethora of desserts that they take back to camp. All the campers chow down and chat, happy to be eating something that isn't gruel. Harold finds peanut butter smeared in his bunk, yet another prank from Duncan. Outside the cabin, Duncan joins Courtney, who admits the joy she felt from breaking a few rules for once, and finally admits her attraction to Duncan by stealing a kiss. The next morning, the remaining campers in the challenge, Duncan, Courtney, Jeff, Gwen, Owen, and Heather, hang from tree branches. Duncan falls first after Chef lists all of the side effects of blood rushing to your head. Next, Heather willingly drops to escape Owen's flatulence, only to have the big guy fall on her moments later. Courtney has a laughing fit and drops out, leaving Gwen and Jeff as the last two campers. Moments later, Jeff passes out, and Gwen wins the challenge for the Gophers. Chef tearfully congratulates Gwen on her victory, saying he'd go to battle with her any day. At the campfire ceremony, marshmallows go to everyone except Harold and Courtney. With three of the bass firmly on Courtney's side, she is confident her safety is secure. Yet, shockingly, the final marshmallow goes to Harold, much to the surprise of DJ, Jeff, and Duncan. However, rules are rules, and Courtney gets dragged down the dock of shame onto the boat of losers. Duncan dashes down the dock, throwing Courtney a memento to remember him by. Back at the campfire, Harold stands alone with his marshmallow, and it is revealed that the votes were tampered with. Sick of the torment from Duncan, Harold changed the votes to kick Courtney off the island. The episode closes with Harold giving a mischievous smile to the camera. Episode 13 puts the extreme in extreme sports, as the campers must participate in 3 different challenges that push them to the limits of danger. The roar of a plane engine jolts the campers awake, as Chris flies over the camp in a fashion that foreshadows the nature of the day's challenge. Chris lands the plane with exhausted campers crowded around, and explains the details of the upcoming events. First is the extreme sofa bed skydiving. 2 campers, Trent and DJ, must plummet and parachute from 5,000 feet to a target that waits for them below, a sofa bed. Secondly, there's the extreme rodeo moose riding. Lashana and Jeff must rodeo ride the Great Canadian Bucking Moose for at least 8 seconds, or be bucked into a pile of filthy socks. Lastly is extreme sea-doo water skiing. Campers must water ski over a muddy racecourse, grabbing as many flags as possible and making it past the finish line. The catch? The driver of the boat tugging the ski line is from the opposing team. Harold and Lindsay will ski for their respective teams. The winning team will, of course, receive immunity. But to sweeten the deal, Chris throws in a pristine mobile shower so the campers can finally get a really good rinse. The campers are released for breakfast before the challenge is set to begin. In the lodge, Owen accidentally eats a letter. Ripping it up, Gwen and Bridget find it to be a love letter in the form of a haiku. Both girls are convinced that the letter was written by their respective love interests, either Trent or Jeff. After arguing and throwing a few insults about their crushes, Bridget and Gwen bet 2 nights of dessert on who wrote the note. With breakfast completed, the campers gather around the rickety plane for the first challenge. Before heading up, Gwen tries to nudge Trent into admitting the poem was his to no avail. In the air, Chris has the boys sign organ donation forms in the event of their demise. In an attempt to hype up Trent for the drop, DJ pats him on the back, accidentally launching Trent out of the plane early. Having seemingly forgotten about his parachute, Trent lands face first in the sand next to his target, failing the challenge and probably breaking a few bones. As the killer bass move their sofa into place, Bridget prods Jeff, hoping to get an admission that he wrote the poem. But just like Gwen, no luck. Meanwhile, DJ plummets through the air with a failing parachute, but his team notices and maneuvers the sofa, allowing DJ to land safely. Round 1, Killer Bass. Gwen tries one last time to get Trent to admit the haiku was his, but Trent seems completely oblivious and is carted off to the medical tent. The campers move on to the second challenge. Cowboy skater dude Jeff is set to ride first, and Bridget compares the flow of riding a moose to the flow of a haiku. Jeff reveals that he has no idea what a haiku is and instead shows Bridget and Gwen the tattoo on his butt as he hops on the moose. Very annoyed at the pantless camper standing on his back, the moose immediately bucks Jeff off and he goes flying into the smelly sock pile. Lashana mounts up next and hangs on for dear life as the moose bucks with rage. Despite her fear and the intense bucking, Lashana rides for well beyond the 8 seconds. Point, Screaming Gophers. With the points tied, it all comes down to the Extreme Sea-Doo Water Ski Challenge. First to ski is Harold, being pulled behind Heather. Taking off with an abrupt jolt, Harold is dragged face down through the mud. Still though, Harold manages to secure the first flag, prompting Heather to take things up a notch. But still, despite the pain and mud, Harold secures all 5 flags. With the finish line approaching, Heather makes a last-ditch attempt to sabotage Harold. Heather pulls a knife to cut Harold's line, but as she reaches down, a tree branch yanks off her top, exposing her and leaving her topless for Harold and the cameras to see. Harold, in a trance at the sight of a topless Heather, loses focus and crashes into a rock and loses all the flags. Not a great start for the bass. Next up, Lindsay rides behind Duncan. To everyone's surprise, Lindsay glides across the mud effortlessly, even pulling a backflip off of a rock. Having secured all 5 flags, Duncan makes an attempt to throw Lindsay off track by crashing into a rock and sending himself flying into a nearby tree. However, his attempts are fruitless as Lindsay uses her momentum to race past the finish line, securing the victory and the shower for the Screaming Gophers. Following the day's activities, Gwen and Bridget find themselves lost as to who could have possibly written the note, and for who. Lashana approaches the two, and Chris reveals that Lashana has been receiving poems for quite some time now. But still, who could be writing them? With the mystery still open, the campfire ceremony begins. The Screaming Gophers surround the campfire, save for Jeff, who is placed in a far-off tree due to his smelliness from the filthy sock pile. Bridget and DJ receive the first 2 marshmallows, and Chris launches the third over to Jeff, leaving Harold, who lost the challenge for his team, and Duncan, who simply couldn't shake Lindsay from her skis. The last marshmallow goes to Duncan, and Harold makes his way down the dock of shame. However, before boarding the boat of losers, he reminisces about his time, citing love, loss, and boobies.
Lashana, I meant every word of that poem.
To the shock of everyone, Harold reveals himself to be the secret poet that's been writing to Lashana. The two meet on the dock and share a kiss before Chef pries Harold away, pulling him onto the boat of losers and off the island. Episode 14 marks the halfway point in the competition as 12 campers have been eliminated up to this point. From here forward, all teams are dissolved and the competition becomes a free-for-all. This episode's challenge, aptly named the Brunch of Disgustingness, however, will pit the boys against the girls in a feast most foul. The episode opens in the main lodge with the campers wondering about the lack of breakfast. Chris assures them there will be plenty later and congratulates the remaining campers on making it this far. He goes on to reveal the teams will merge next week and the cabins rearrange. Right before releasing the campers to settle into their new places, Chris exclaims there will be no elimination this week and that the challenge will be for reward ward alone. As Bridget is set to leave the cabin, she runs into Jeff, and the two talk about what a great time they had together, nearly sharing a kiss. That is before Chris jumps in and drags Bridget to the girls' cabin. Being the only remaining girl on the killer bass, Bridget is the only new arrival into the girls' cabin, and she finds herself optimistic about the opportunity. Her optimism is soon squashed upon arrival, though, when she enters to Lashana and Heather arguing. Yet again, almost coming to blows, yet again. Heather notices Bridget in the doorway and welcomes her in with fake niceties, even offering up Lindsay's bunk for her. Despite the clear dysfunction of the cabin, Lindsay assures Bridget that it's gotta be better than the guys' cabin. However, there seems to be little to no quarrels between the boys. While the girls are arguing, the guys hang around, drink soda, and listen to music. Following an epic burp that knocks over trees and skates fur from squirrels, Jeff is declared team captain to all the boys' glee. Back with the girls, Heather continues with her overly nice gestures, offering Bridget her makeup, something not even Lindsay, a member of her alliance, is allowed to do. Lashana, knowing Heather is up to something, warns Bridget about Heather's manipulative ways. Heather takes things a step further, taping a line down the middle of the cabin, separating her and Lindsay from Gwen and Lashana, forcing Bridget to choose where she aligns herself with the girls. After a moment of contemplation and disappointment, Bridget chooses Lashana and Gwen's side. With everyone moved in, the campers return to the main lodge for the challenge of the day. A simple premise with a disgusting twist. The Brunch of Disgustingness is a 9-course meal of the most disgusting, hardly edible meals that can be thought of. Each course of the meal will see the guys race against the girls, with the first team to finish eating winning a point. The team with the most points will win a small vacation to a nearby 5-star resort, and all the amenities that comes with it. Again, there is no elimination. This is all for a small trip away from the drab camp. For the first course, the campers must all eat bovine testicles.
Well,
The guys, uncertain at the prospect of eating such a delicate piece of anatomy, find it hard to get through the meal. Some of the girls even recoil at the dish, but continue forward, motivated by the stay at the resort. Bridget reveals she is a vegetarian, only eating after receiving some reassuring advice from Jeff. Bridget on board, girls take the first point. The next revolting meal is live grasshopper pizza with jellyfish and live anchovy. The girls have a hard time getting through the meal, and Bridget turns to meditation to get Lindsay to down the dish. On the guy's side, all goes well, except for Trent, who can't stomach the meal until the other guys force him to eat, securing their point when Lashana refuses to eat. For the third course, Chef brings out spaghetti, more like earthworms covered in snail slime and hairballs. Jeff makes a run for it, but is subdued by DJ, who brings him back to the lodge. The guys blindfold themselves, and Lindsay tries Bridget's meditation trick. However, the worms prove too much even for Zen mindfulness to overcome, and the guys take another point. Next is French bunion soup with hangnail crackers. Needless to say, gross. The girls score a point by cleverly using a funnel to bypass tasting the dish and pouring it directly down their throats. The guys, on the other hand, cannot handle the dish. The next 5 dishes are presented in montage form, both teams trying their best to consume a vast array of foul dishes. Chef's pre-chewed gumball, skunk juice, literal sandals and soda cans, banana peel soup, and fish heads are all presented. And by the end, there's a tie, leaving one final dish: hot dogs made from dolphins. Bridget, loving dolphins, is appalled and refuses to eat. Same with the animal-loving DJ, resulting in a stalemate. Still needing to break the tie, Chris calls Lashana and Owen for an eat-off of one final dish: shots of freshly mixed cockroach. With the mixture poured into 15 shot glasses, camper that takes the most shots wins for their team. Both make their way through 6 shots before Lashana seems to reach her limit, and Owen continues, downing 3 more before passing out, securing the victory for the boys. As Chris monologues the end of the episode, the guys make their way to the dock, board a luxury yacht for their much-needed weekend away, while the girls remain at camp, divided as ever. Episode 15 looks to really shake things up in Camp Wawanakwa, with all teams dissolved, some returning faces, and a challenge that pushes the campers' pain tolerance. The episode opens with the girls staring each other down with suspicion and contempt and Tim, and the boys returning from their getaway. The guys, having spent the weekend relaxing and partying with one another, seem closer than ever. Meanwhile, the girls seem intensely on edge thanks to the division of their cabin from last episode. However, once Chris announces that all teams are dissolved, the boys find no issues in flying solo. That's not it though. Chris makes another announcement, telling the campers to ready themselves. From the water, with a blaze of fire raging behind her, Eva rides back to the island, set to make her return due to immense audience demand. Everyone recoils in fear as Eva stomps onto the dock, stating her intentions to not only win, but pay special attention to her former teammates that instigated her initial elimination. Finally, swinging in on a vine, the enigmatic Izzy swings back onto the scene. Having never left the island, Izzy explains she spent the last number of weeks hiding from the RMCP in a beaver dam. Not so sure making a grand return on national television is the best way to remain incognito, but hey, the campers then gather in the amphitheater after Eva and Izzy settle into their cabin. Chris explains the challenge known as Say Uncle, a torture challenge structured like a game show. Each camper will be given a random, grueling test of endurance and must last 10 seconds or be eliminated. The final camper will win elimination, as well as a trailer to take home at the end of the summer. First up is Duncan, who must complete the Turtle Puck Shot challenge. Duncan stands in front of a goalie net, completely unprotected, while Chef launches angry snapping turtles at him with a hockey stick. Despite being bitten in some unmentionable places, Duncan prevails. Meanwhile, Trent tries to rekindle the flame between himself and Gwen by making amends for leaving her buried on the beach during Phobia Factor. Lindsay's up next, having to endure marshmallow waxing. Chef applies hot melted marshmallows over her face and rips it off. Lindsay, seemingly unfazed, appreciates how clear the challenge made her skin.
Leave how smooth that is. Thanks.
Next up is Bridget, chosen by Lindsay at the behest of Eva. She is tasked with standing in a barrel of leeches, but right before she is set to start, Jeff jumps in and volunteers himself for the challenge. Lasting a total of 9 9/9 of a second, Chris deems Jeff's attempt a failure and sends him to the loser's stockade. The next 4 contestants, Owen, Gwen, DJ, and Bridget, are shown in rapid succession. Owen wears wooden shorts pecked by a woodpecker, Gwen has her nose plucked, DJ is constricted by a massive snake, and Bridget is given a jacket of bees. Then comes the next challenge, 10 seconds in a crate with the vicious Sasquatchanakwa. Bridget is given the opportunity to decide who goes in and chooses Eva. Sure of mind, Eva enters the box and 10 seconds later emerges with new boots and a hat seemingly made from the creature. Jeez, do not mess with Eva. With Eva's success, Bridget is eliminated, joining Jeff in the stocks. Following Eva's exceptional performance, Chris shows a montage of campers who were unable to complete their challenges. Trent can't stand the stench of skunks as he tries to hop between rocks. Gwen can't endure even 10 seconds of new age music. Lindsay refuses a chainsaw haircut from Chef, and Owen can't handle a brain freeze from multiple tubs of ice cream. Yikes, neither could I. Following these eliminations, Izzy successfully takes being shocked by eels. In fact, Izzy enjoyed the rush so much, she chooses herself for the next challenge, a poison ivy spa treatment. Izzy rises from the spa chair with welts and rashes, but is successful. However, given the nature of the challenge, Izzy is eliminated, since the contestants she chose completed their challenge. With all but 2 campers eliminated, Lashana and Eva enter sudden death. If Lashana can last 10 seconds log rolling with Molotov, the log rolling grizzly, she wins the day's challenge. Determined to get the trailer, Lashana refuses to back down. After muscling control of the log from Molotov, Lashana jumps to a halt, causing the grizzly to lose balance and fall into the piranha-infested water. With Molotov subdued, Lashana wins and Eva is eliminated. At the campfire ceremony, Chris reveals he is out of marshmallows, much to the despair of Owen. This time around, Chris decides to show each of the campers' confessional votes to stir the pot. 6 campers vote for Eva and 2 for Heather, meaning Eva's voted off again. With all the confessionals revealed, Eva swears revenge on Chris and the other campers before being shown in a straitjacket aboard the boat of losers. And just as quickly as she made her return, Eva takes her leave of Total Drama Island. Avast! Episode 16 brings the high seas to Camp Wawanakwa. Kind of. Oh, well, not really. While there's no pirating or swashbuckling, this week's challenge is all about a pirate's favorite pastime, treasure. The show opens with Lashana leaving her newly won trailer before cutting over to Trent and Gwen spending time near the dock. Sparks fly when Trent climbs from the water, asking Gwen what she's sketching, calling her beautiful. Even though she was drawing a picture of him, in her confessional, Gwen Gwen adamantly refuses any interest in Trent. Something tells me that's not quite true. Immediately following this, the scene cuts to Chris in a pirate costume firing off a massive cannon that strikes Lashana's trailer. Bummer. With a megaphone, Chris calls the campers to the amphitheater for the rundown of this week's challenge. Chris gives the basis of the challenge for the day, a piratey spin on a traditional scavenger hunt. The campers are tasked not with finding buried treasure, but with finding keys to treasure chests that will contain prizes for them. Chris then instructs the campers to pull from a bucket that contains clues to the whereabouts of their keys and sends them off. Trent is shown back on the dock, but instead of going for a relaxing swim, he must retrieve a key hanging from a pole jutting out of the water. Catch? It's being swarmed by a man-eating shark. Cleverly, Trent throws fish away from his objective, luring the sharks away and allowing him to obtain his key with ease. Next, Heather must retrieve her key from Chef's fridge without getting caught, which proves difficult as Chef stands in the doorway with a comically large cleaver. Heather calmly closes the fridge and makes a slow exit out of the kitchen. Probably a smart move. Meanwhile, Gwen stands outside of a skunk hole where her key is lodged. She wonders how she can possibly retrieve the key when Trent comes up and suggests flooding the skunks away. Back at the main lodge, Lindsay holds a rope for Heather, who is rappelling into the kitchen. Putting on her best sneaking skills, she quietly walks behind Chef, who's asleep, and takes her key. Attacked by a bug, Lindsay nearly drops the rope, and Heather almost loses her key, but the two regain their composure and make their escape. Back at the skunk hole, Trent and Gwen approach with a bucket of water. Together, the two successfully flush out the smelly vermin, and Gwen gets her key. For his help, Gwen rushes over to Trent, landing a kiss. What a touching moment. Unfortunately for them, the devious Heather and Lindsay watch on from behind some bushes. In a confessional, Heather proclaims that the relationship will not stand, and her alliance will be the only one allowed in camp. Next, multiple campers are shown hunting for their keys. Duncan is seen leaping through a flaming ring, successfully retrieving his key. DJ has trouble grabbing his key that is hanging from a tall tree branch. Jeff, wearing a snorkel, steps into a toilet in the communal washrooms. Izzy gets Lindsay's key from a beehive. She comes back, covered in bees, that chase Lindsay off the dock. Owen approaches a sleeping bear that has his key wrapped around his neck. Owen tries to sneakily take the key, but the bear traps Owen in his grip as it shifts its sleeping position. Finally, Izzy tries to get her key from a massive snake that locks its fangs directly into her head. Heather walks by and brushes off the horrific incident, calling an alliance meeting with Izzy. On the dock with Lindsay, ravaged by bees, Heather says they need to break up Trent and Gwen and start by writing a letter to Trent. Before their plan is enacted, we see Lashana trying to retrieve her key as she balances on a rickety wooden bridge that runs over crocodile-infested water. Back with Heather's devious plan, Lindsay enters the girls' cabin, letter in hand, places it on Gwen's bunk, right as Gwen walks in. Lindsay hides as Gwen reads the letter that calls her to the dock of shame for a surprise. I wonder what Heather has planned for Gwen at the dock. Back in the communal washrooms, Jeff calls out for help in getting his key, while Lindsay and Heather continue scheming. Heather tells Lindsay to load Trent to the dock and then keep an eye out for Gwen. Uh-oh. I think I know where this is going. Moments later, Heather is waiting on the dock as Lindsay approaches with Trent. Heather begins fake crying, prompting Trent to come see what's wrong. Heather tells Trent Gwen has been so mean to her, and even goes on to say that Gwen actually says horrible things about Trent too. Trent believes Heather's facade, and he slumps over in despair as Gwen approaches. Lindsay lets out bird noises, prompting Heather to enact the most devious part of her plan. She leans in and kisses Trent, with Gwen watching on in grief. We then see Trent and Gwen on different parts of the island screaming out in anguish. In their confessionals, the two express the hurt they feel from the betrayal. Ouch. Say what you will about Heather, she knows how to target someone where it really hurt. Following the heartbreak debacle, Owen is seen in the cave, still working on getting his key. Gwen lets out her frustration in the girls' cabin. Lashana walks in, beaten and bruised, asking what's going on. Gwen gives her side of the story, and Lashana, knowing this is some classic Heather manipulation, goes around the camp telling everyone to vote for Heather. Back at the campfire, the contestants open their chests to some less than exciting prizes. Duncan gets a bag of chips, Owen gets nothing, Gwen gets a toaster, you get the idea. However, Heather's chest contains a gift basket with a card declaring her invincibility from elimination that week, much to the anger of everyone else. The only thing left for the campers to do is cast their votes for elimination. In their confessionals, the general consensus seems to be Trent's leaving the island due to Heather's immunity. Unfortunately, Trent seems none the wiser as he talks about all the good friends he's made. At the campfire ceremony, Trent watches on as marshmallows are tossed beyond him to everyone except him. He looks on in disbelief as Chris holds an empty plate. With no marshmallow in hand, Trent realizes he is eliminated. Following his elimination, Heather's meddling is revealed to the entire camp. Trent gives Gwen a pep talk as they make up before gathering his things to make the walk down the dock of shame out of the competition. Yikes, Heather really played everyone, but will her actions finally have some repercussions? Yes, she will. Just as the episode closes, Lashana rearranges the pipes to the washroom, and Heather is covered in sewage. Gross, but well-deserved. Episode 14 marks the halfway point in the competition, as 12 campers have been eliminated up to this point. From here forward, all teams are dissolved, and the competition becomes a free-for-all. This episode's challenge, aptly named the Brunch of Disgustingness, however, will pit the boys against the girls in a feast most foul. The episode opens in the main lodge, with the campers wondering about the lack of breakfast. Chris assures them there will be plenty later and congratulates the remaining campers on making it this far. He goes on to reveal the teams will merge next week, and the cabins rearrange. Right before releasing the campers to settle into their new places, Chris exclaims there will be no elimination this week, and that the challenge will be for reward alone. As Bridget is set to leave the cabin, she runs into Jeff, and the two talk about what a great time they had together, nearly sharing a kiss. That is before Chris jumps in and drags Bridget to the girls' cabin. Being the only remaining girl on the Killer Bass, Bridget is the only new arrival into the girls' cabin, and she finds herself optimistic about the opportunity. Her optimism is soon squashed upon arrival, though, when she enters to Lashana and Heather arguing. Yet again, almost coming to blows, yet again. Heather notices Bridget in the doorway and welcomes her in with fake niceties, even offering up Lindsay's bunk for her. Despite the clear dysfunction of the cabin, Lindsay assures Bridget that it's gotta be better than the guys' cabin. However, there seems to be little to no quarrels between the boys. While the girls are arguing, the guys hang around, drink soda, and listen to music. Following an epic burp that knocks over trees and scapes fur from squirrels, Jeff is declared team captain to all the boys' glee. Back with the girls, Heather continues with her overly nice gestures, offering Bridget her makeup, something not even Lindsay, a member of her alliance, is allowed to do. Lashana, knowing Heather is up to something, warns Bridget about Heather's manipulative ways. Heather takes things a step further, taping a line down the middle of the cabin, separating her and Lindsay from Gwen and Lashana, forcing Bridget to choose where she aligns herself with the girls. After a moment of contemplation and disappointment, Bridget chooses Lashana and Gwen's side. With everyone moved in, the campers return to the main lodge for the challenge of the day. A simple premise with a disgusting twist. The Brunch of Disgustingness is a 9-course meal of the most disgusting, hardly edible meals that can be thought of. Each course of the meal will see the guys race against the girls, with the first team to finish eating winning a point. The team with the most points will win a small vacation to a nearby 5-star resort and all the amenities that comes with it. Again, there is no elimination. This is all for a small trip away from the drab camp. For the first course, the campers must all eat bovine testicles.
Well,
The guys, uncertain at the prospect of eating such a delicate piece of anatomy, find it hard to get through the meal. Some of the girls even recoil at the dish, but continue forward, motivated by the stay at the resort. Bridget reveals she is a vegetarian, only eating after receiving some reassuring advice from Jeff. Bridget on board, girls take the first point. The next revolting meal is live grasshopper pizza with jellyfish and live anchovy. The girls have a hard time getting through the meal, and Bridget turns to meditation to get Lindsay to down the dish. On the guy's side, all goes well, except for Trent, who can't stomach the meal until the other guys force him to eat, securing their point when Lashana refuses to eat. For the third course, Chef brings out spaghetti, more like earthworms covered in snail slime and hairballs. Jeff makes a run for it, but is subdued by DJ, who brings him back to the lodge. The guys blindfold themselves, and Lindsay tries Bridget's meditation trick. However, the worms prove too much even for Zen mindfulness to overcome, and the guys take another point. Next is French bunion soup with hangnail crackers. Needless to say, gross. The girls score a point by cleverly using a funnel to bypass tasting the dish and pouring it directly down their throats. The guys, on the other hand, cannot handle the dish. The next 5 dishes are presented in montage form, both teams trying their best to consume a vast array of foul dishes. Chef's pre-chewed gumball, skunk juice, literal sandals and soda cans, banana peel soup, and fish heads are all presented. And by the end, there's a tie, leaving one final dish. Hot dogs made from dolphin. Bridget, loving dolphins, is appalled and refuses to eat. Same with the animal-loving DJ, resulting in a stalemate. Still needing to break the tie, Chris calls Lashana and Owen for an eat-off of one final dish. Shots of freshly mixed cockroach. With the mixture poured into 15 shot glasses, camper that takes the most shots wins for their team. Both make their way through 6 shots before before Lashana seems to reach her limit, and Owen continues, downing 3 more before passing out, securing the victory for the boys. As Chris monologues the end of the episode, the guys make their way to the dock board a luxury yacht for their much-needed weekend away, while the girls remain at camp, divided as ever. Episode 15 looks to really shake things up in Camp Wawanakwa, with all teams dissolved, some returning faces, and a challenge that pushes the campers' pain tolerance. The episode opens with the girls staring each other down with suspicion and contempt, and the boys returning from their getaway. The guys, having spent the weekend relaxing and partying with one another, seem closer than ever. Meanwhile, the girls seem intensely on edge thanks to the division of their cabin from last episode. However, once Chris announces that all teams are dissolved, the boys find no issues in flying solo. That's not it though. Chris makes another announcement, telling the campers to ready themselves. From the water, with a blaze of fire raging behind her, Eva rides back to the island, set to make her return due to immense audience demand. Everyone recoils in fear as Eva stomps onto the dock, stating her intentions to not only win, but pay special attention to her former teammates that instigated her initial elimination. Finally, swinging in on a vine, the enigmatic Izzy swings back onto the scene. Having never left the island, Izzy explains she spent the last number of weeks hiding from the RMCP in a beaver dam. Not so sure making a grand return on national television is the best way to remain incognito, but hey. The campers then gather in the amphitheater after Eva and Izzy settle into their cabin. Chris explains the challenge known as Say Uncle, a torture challenge structured like a game show. Each camper will be given a random, grueling test of endurance and must last 10 seconds or be eliminated. The final camper will win elimination, as well as a trailer to take home at the end of the summer. First up is Duncan, who must complete the Turtle Puck Shot challenge. Duncan stands in front of a goalie net, completely unprotected, while Chef launches angry snapping turtles at him with a hockey stick. Despite being bitten in some unmentionable places, Duncan prevails. Meanwhile, Trent tries to rekindle the flame between himself and Gwen by making amends for leaving her buried on the beach during Phobia Factor. Lindsay's up next, having to endure marshmallow waxing. Chef applies hot melted marshmallows over her face and rips it off. Lindsay, seemingly unfazed, appreciates how clear the challenge made her skin.
Leave how smooth that is. Thanks.
Next up is Bridget, chosen by Lindsay at the behest of Eva. She is tasked with standing in a barrel of leeches, but right before she is set to start, Jeff jumps in and volunteers himself for the challenge. Lasting a total of 9 9/9 of a second, Chris deems Jeff's attempt a failure and sends him to the loser's stockade. The next 4 contestants, Owen, Gwen, DJ, and Bridget, are shown in rapid succession. Owen wears wooden shorts pecked by a woodpecker, Gwen has her nose plucked, DJ is constricted by a massive snake, and Bridget is given a jacket of bees. Then comes the next challenge, 10 seconds in a crate with the vicious Sasquatchanakwa. Bridget is given the opportunity to decide who goes in and chooses Eva. Sure of mind, Eva enters the box and 10 seconds later emerges with new boots and a hat seemingly made from the creature. Jeez, do not mess with Eva. With Eva's success, Bridget is eliminated, joining Jeff in the stocks. Following Eva's exceptional performance, Chris shows a montage of campers who were unable to complete their challenges. Trent can't stand the stench of skunks as he tries to hop between rocks. Gwen can't endure even 10 seconds of new age music. Lindsay refuses a chainsaw haircut from Chef, and Owen can't handle a brain freeze from multiple tubs of ice cream. Yikes, neither could I. Following these eliminations, Izzy successfully takes being shocked by eels. In fact, Izzy enjoyed the rush so much, she chooses herself for the next challenge, a poison ivy spa treatment. Izzy rises from the spa chair with welts and rashes, but is successful. However, given the nature of the challenge, Izzy is eliminated since the contestants she chose completed their challenge. With all but 2 campers eliminated, Lashana and Eva enter sudden death. If Lashana can last 10 seconds log rolling with Molotov, the log rolling grizzly, she wins the day's challenge. Determined to get the trailer, Lashana refuses to back down. After muscling control of the log from Molotov, Lashana jumps to a halt, causing the grizzly to lose balance and fall into the piranha-infested water. With Molotov subdued, Lashana wins, and Eva is eliminated. At the campfire ceremony, Chris reveals he is out of marshmallows, much to the despair of Owen. This time around, Chris decides to show each of the campers' confessional votes to stir the pot. 6 campers vote for Eva, and 2 for Heather, meaning Eva's voted off again. With all the confessionals revealed, Eva swears revenge on Chris and the other campers before being shown in a straitjacket aboard the boat of losers. And just as quickly as she made her return, Eva diva takes her leave of Total Drama Island. Avast! Episode 16 brings the high seas to Camp Wawanakwa. Kind of. Oh, well, not really. While there's no pirating or swashbuckling, this week's challenge is all about a pirate's favorite pastime, treasure. The show opens with Lashana leaving her newly won trailer before cutting over to Trent and Gwen spending time near the dock. Sparks fly when Trent climbs from the water, asking Gwen what she's sketching, calling her beautiful. Even though she was drawing a picture of him, in her confessional, Gwen adamantly refuses any interest in Trent. Something tells me that's not quite true. Immediately following this, the scene cuts to Chris in a pirate costume firing off a massive cannon that strikes Lashana's trailer. Bummer. With a megaphone, Chris calls the campers to the amphitheater for the rundown of this week's challenge. Chris gives the basis of the challenge for the day, a piratey spin on a traditional scavenger hunt. The campers are tasked not with finding buried treasure, but with finding keys to treasure chests that will contain prizes for them. Chris then instructs the campers to pull from a bucket that contains clues to the whereabouts of their keys and sends them off. Trent is shown back on the dock, but instead of going for a relaxing swim, he must retrieve a key hanging from a pole jutting out of the water. Catch? It's being swarmed by a man-eating shark. Cleverly, Trent throws fish away from his objective, luring the sharks away and allowing him to obtain his key with ease. Next, Heather must retrieve her key from Chef's fridge without getting caught, which proves difficult as Chef stands in the doorway with a comically large cleaver. Heather calmly closes the fridge and makes a slow exit out of the kitchen. Probably a smart move. Meanwhile, Gwen stands outside of a skunk hole where her key is lodged. She wonders how she can possibly retrieve the key when Trent comes up and suggests flooding the skunks away. Back at the main lodge, Lindsay holds a rope for Heather, who is rappelling into the kitchen. Putting on her best sneaking skills, she quietly walks behind Chef, who's asleep, and takes her key. Attacked by a bug, Lindsay nearly drops the rope, and Heather almost loses her key, but the two regain their composure and make their escape. Back at the skunk hole, Trent and Gwen approach with a bucket of water. Together, the two successfully flush out the smelly vermin, and Gwen gets her key. For his help, Gwen rushes over to Trent, planting a kiss. What a touching moment. Unfortunately for them, the devious Heather and Lindsay watch on from behind some bushes. In a confessional, Heather proclaims that their relationship will not stand, and her alliance will be the only one allowed in camp. Next, multiple campers are shown hunting for their keys. Duncan is seen leaping through a flaming ring, successfully retrieving his key. DJ has trouble grabbing his key that is hanging from a tall tree branch. Jeff, wearing a snorkel, steps into a toilet in the communal washrooms. Izzy gets Lindsay's key from a beehive. She comes back covered in bees that chase Lindsay off the dock. Owen approaches a sleeping bear that has his key wrapped around his neck. Owen tries to sneakily take the key, but the bear traps Owen in his grip as it shifts its sleeping position. Finally, Izzy tries to get her key from a massive snake that locks its fangs directly into her head. Heather walks by and brushes off the horrific incident, calling an alliance meeting with Izzy. On the dock with Lindsay, ravaged by bees, Heather says they need to break up Trent and Gwen and start by writing a letter to Trent. Before their plan is enacted, we see Lashana trying to retrieve her key as she balances on a rickety wooden bridge that runs over crocodile-infested water. Back with Heather's devious plan, Lindsay enters the girls' cabin, letter in hand, places it on Gwen's bunk. Right as Gwen walks in, Lindsay hides as Gwen reads the letter that calls her to the dock of shame for a surprise. I wonder what Heather has planned for Gwen at the dock. Back in the communal washrooms, Jeff calls out for help in getting his key, while Lindsay and Heather continue scheming. Heather tells Lindsay to load Trent to the dock and then keep an eye out for Gwen. Uh-oh. I think I know where this is going. Moments later, Heather is waiting on the dock as Lindsay approaches with Trent. Heather begins fake crying, prompting Trent to come see what's wrong. Heather tells Trent Gwen has been so mean to her, and even goes on to say that Gwen actually says horrible things about Trent too. Trent believes Heather's facade, and he slumps over in despair as Gwen approaches. Lindsay lets out bird noises, prompting Heather to enact the most devious part of her plan. She leans in and kisses Trent, with Gwen watching on in grief. We then see Trent and Gwen on different parts of the island screaming out in anguish. In their confessionals, the two express the hurt they feel from the betrayal. Ouch. Say what you will about Heather, she knows how to target someone where it really hurt. Following the heartbreak debacle, Owen is seen in the cave, still working on getting his key. Gwen lets out her frustration in the girls' cabin. Lashana walks in, beaten and bruised, asking what's going on. Gwen gives her side of the story, and Lashana, knowing this is some classic Heather manipulation, goes around the camp telling everyone to vote for Heather. Back at the campfire, the contestants open their chests to some less than exciting prizes. Duncan gets a bag of chips, Owen gets nothing, Gwen gets a toaster, you get the idea. However, Heather's chest contains a gift basket with a card declaring her invincibility from elimination that week, much to the anger of everyone else. The only thing left for the campers to do is cast their votes for elimination. In their confessionals, the general consensus seems to be Trent's leaving the island due to Heather's immunity. Unfortunately, Trent seems none the wiser as he talks about all the good friends he's made. At the campfire ceremony, Trent watches on as marshmallows are tossed beyond him to everyone except him. He looks on in disbelief as Chris holds an empty plate. With no marshmallow in hand, Trent realizes he is eliminated. Following his elimination, Heather's meddling is revealed to the entire camp. Trent gives Gwen a pep talk as they make up before gathering his things to make the walk down the dock of shame out of the competition. Yikes, Heather really played everyone, but will her actions finally have some repercussions? Yes, she will. Just as the episode closes, Lashana rearranges the pipes to the washroom, and Heather is covered in sewage. Gross, but well deserved. Episode 17 brings the campers back to their childhood with the always classic hide and seek. This version of the game, however, much like every challenge in Total Drama Island, comes with a twist. Heather and Lindsay open the show on the steps of the cabin, discussing the aftermath of last week's challenge. Inside the cabin, Lashana offers comfort to Gwen by promising revenge on Heather for Trent's elimination. All of the campers meet on the dock, where Chris explains the rules of the day's challenge. A simple game of hide-and-seek made harder by Chef's advanced degree in manhunting and uber-powerful water gun. There are 3 ways for a camper to win immunity. They can either avoid detection, make it to home base before being drenched, or help Chef locate another camper during the game. Simple enough, and with the rules set, Chris starts the 10-minute timer for everyone to hide. The campers all take off, except for Lindsay, who seems a little confused. In fact, Lindsay is the first camper discovered, hiding in the girls' cabin beneath some sheets. While Lindsay makes a mad dash to hide in the washrooms, Lashana is seen with a makeshift snorkel submerging herself underneath the dock. In the woods, the guys all had the same idea to hide in a cave. While together, Duncan attempts to form the guys' alliance due to the fact that they are outnumbered by the girls on the island. Through some extreme intimidation and persuasion, Duncan convinces all the guys to unite, and the boys' alliance is formed. The guys then all scatter to find their own hiding spots. Izzy seems to have abandoned the idea of finding a hiding spot altogether, instead electing to tail Chef, copying his every move. Owen and DJ both find spots to hide atop opposite sides of the roof of the main lodge. Jeff perches at the top of a flimsy tree, and Gwen hides underneath a carpet of grass. Lindsay follows Heather inside the lodge, leading to Heather telling Lindsay off, clearly hurting her feelings. During their spat, Chef walks in and Heather sacrifices Lindsay so she can make her own escape. Lindsay escapes Chef's clutches and the 2 girls take off for the safe spot on the dock. But just feet away from home base, Chef takes aim and drenches the girls, eliminating them. Back at the main lodge, Chef has returned to continue his hunt, checking every nook and cranny. Izzy, unfortunately, can't hold back a sneeze, revealing her position. The 2 face off in true Western fashion before charging at one another. Izzy launches a flurry of punches and strikes, expertly blocked by Chef, knocking Izzy back. Chef launches forward to attack, and the battle continues until Izzy leaps over her attacker and dashes out of the window through the lodge, making for home base. Chef closes in behind her, taking aim as Izzy approaches the lifeguard chair. Izzy ducks and slides, narrowly avoiding the water spray, but unfortunately slides right through the puddle formed from Chef's spray. Izzy slips into the water, upset at her technical elimination, and catches wind of Lashana's hiding spot, promising to keep quiet. Just beneath the fire pit, Bridget has found sanctuary behind a small rock, but she's unknowingly gotten the string lights caught on her foot. A family of skunks join Bridget, causing her to back away. However, with her foot entangled, she pulls a pole down from the fire pit that knocks over a large barrel. The barrel rolls and falls behind the skunks with a thud, startling them and causing them to spray Bridget. Letting out a loud scream, Bridget is quickly discovered by Chef, who sprays her at Bridget's request. Back at the main lodge, Owen and DJ are attracted to the peak of the roof by a small bird, causing the 2 to discover each other. They argue with one another about who rightfully owns the hiding place. Owen and DJ both fall through the roof, quickly discovered by Heather and Lindsay. Heather claims the discovery of both, earning herself immunity, but telling Lindsay to find her own. Chef leads his caravan of caught campers through the woods as he continues his search for the remaining hiders. He steps on Gwen in her grass patch and kicks Jeff out his tree, catching them both. Chef checks the wind, sniffs, and tastes the ground beneath him, having caught wind of Duncan's whereabouts. After discovering a hare, Chef tracks Duncan in his cave, and that makes everyone found except for Lashana. Chef runs for the dock, where Lashana is sitting on the lifeguard chair, safe from capture. With every camper either caught or declared safe, the game ends and it's time for them to decide who gets eliminated. The girls gather together in their cabin and decide they need to vote together to counteract the boys' alliance. They discuss, throwing around different names about who to vote for. Heather tries to convince Izzy to vote with her, and Lindsay saying they could be best friends. Lashana jumps in, pointing out Heather's manipulative ways, to which Lindsay agrees. Heather elbows Lindsay for her remark, causing her to spill her nail polish. Lindsay looks at the puddle of nail polish in horror and anger. In her confessional, Lindsay starts to question Heather's friendship for the first time all season. In a similar fashion, the guys gather on the dock to discuss their game plan. Despite Jeff's objections, they all agree that Bridget is the one to be voted out. At the campfire ceremony, marshmallows go to everyone but Owen, Duncan, and Bridget, all of whom received quite a few votes. It comes down to Duncan and Bridget, and the final marshmallow goes to Duncan. Bridget makes her way down the dock of shame, and Jeff runs up, declaring he didn't vote for her. The two lean in for a kiss, but Jeff retreats due to Bridget's skunk smell. Though a little hurt by this, Bridget boards the boat of losers and rides away from Camp Wawanakwa. Episode 18 calls on the campers' inner biker and puts their mechanical skills to the test. This week, we're talking motocross. The episode opens with the campers engaging in typical beach activities, throwing frisbees, getting a tan, the whole 9 yards. Except for Jeff, who's still beat up about Bridget's elimination. Lindsay and Heather's friendship continues to strain, while Duncan and the guys provide whatever support they can offer to Jeff. Over the PA, Chris calls the campers to the Arts and Crafts Center for the day's challenge. Chris tasks everyone with building their own killer bikes, and goes on to explain the best designed win. After receiving a multi-bike manual, the campers set off. The guys amp each other up, declaring their intention to build the best bike so that they can make sure to get one of the girls out this week to even the odds. Meanwhile, Heather pulls Lindsay aside, forcing her to build her bike for her. Heather shoves Lindsay inside the Arts and Crafts Center to disassemble Chef's Roadhog, while the other campers are left outside to fend for themselves. As everyone finishes up their construction, Chris calls the campers back to the Arts and Crafts Center to assess their work. He looks over the bikes, impressed by everyone's except DJ's. Chris then points out the absence of Lashana and Izzy, who are going for a joyride through the woods. Despite two campers missing, Chris moves on with the challenge. Surely they wouldn't just construct these bikes to look at them. It's time to race. Chris then goes on to announce the twist of the challenge. The campers won't be riding their own bike. Instead, they'll pull names to ride somebody else's. This upsets Heather since it completely foils her plan. On the beach, the campers gather around and pull names as Chris explains the challenge further. If a bike makes it across the finish line, the camper that built the bike will get to ride it through another race for invincibility from elimination. Lindsay draws Heather's bike, Owen gets Duncan's bike, Jeff is riding Gwen's bike, DJ pulls Jeff's, Gwen draws Owen's, Heather gets DJ's, and Duncan will be riding Lindsay's. Chris makes one last call for Lashana and Izzy, who are now gliding across the lake. Guess they won't be participating this week. With all names drawn, the campers line up at the starting line. Chris sets the campers off, and they cruise past him. Well, except for Owen, who's having a hard time understanding Duncan's construction, and Heather, who can't get DJ's bike to move at all. On the course, Duncan, Gwen, and Lindsay race with ease. DJ, though terrified, seems to be having an easy enough time on Jeff's bike, at first. In a confessional, Jeff admits to completely forgetting the bolts on his bike, and moments later, the bike falls apart right underneath DJ. Jeff crashes into the rubble, followed by Heather, who's pushing her bike along the course. So with those crashes, Gwen, Jeff, and DJ are out of the race to come for invincibility. At the starting line, Owen finally figures out how to get his bike running by pulling on the skull ornament at the front. An engine rumbles and Owen takes off at blinding speeds, crossing the finish line first and taking off further around the island. Moments later, Lindsay, Duncan, and Gwen cross the finish line. With those successful finishes, Owen, Lindsay, Duncan, and Heather qualify for the invincibility race. The four qualifiers line up at the starting line for the significantly more dangerous motocross course. The campers must avoid landmines, maneuver oil slicks, and jump a pond of piranhas. Before setting off, Chris throws in one final twist. The first to cross gets invincibility, the last to cross gets eliminated from the competition without a vote. Yikes! Talk about raising the stakes. Heather lets Lindsay in on her new strategy, telling her that they need to stick together. Heather explains that in order for them to win, Lindsay needs to clear the obstacles in front of Heather and create a safe path across. Lindsay, realizing that would mean Heather would win, is unsure, but is ultimately convinced. The campers take off, and Owen immediately wipes out after a landmine explodes beneath him. Duncan loses control at the oil slick, eliminating himself from the race. All the while, Lindsay soars past the landmines and wheelies through the oil slick, creating a path easy for Heather to navigate. Lindsay glides across the piranha pool, stopping just short of the finish line, allowing Heather to soar over her and win the race. Lindsay finally crosses and cheers at their safety from elimination. However, Chris interjects, saying that since Duncan and Owen were technically unable to cross the finish, Lindsay is the last to cross, and thereby eliminated. Heather refuses to give Lindsay her invincibility, saying it's too risky. Lindsay questions Heather, saying that she actually won since she built Heather's bike. The campers all gather around as Lindsay and Heather's friendship completely falls apart. Heather tells Lindsay that she never even actually liked her, angering all the other campers. Fueled by rage, Lindsay tells Heather off, using a number of choice words that even shock Duncan. Heather shrugs off Lindsay's words as Izzy and Lashana arrive back on scene. Lindsay gathers her things, says goodbye to everyone, and walks down the dock of shame with her head held high. She boards the boat of losers and rides off the island into the sunset as all the other campers wave farewell. Episode 19 sees the return of the psycho killer from Duncan's story as the campers must survive a real-life horror movie. The episode opens with the campers gathered around a movie projector watching a horror movie in the woods. Duncan, Gwen, and Izzy enjoy the frightening scenes before them, while everyone watches on mortified, especially the skittish DJ, made even worse by Duncan pulling out a hook hand and screaming at him. The campers all express their love or hatred for scary movies until moments later they look over to the dock where Chef and Chris are loading luggage onto the boat of losers. As Duncan approaches, Chef jumps and hurriedly puts his last bags on board, clearly in a rush to leave. Chris and Chef ride off with visibly freaked out looks on their faces. Owen discovers one bag left behind with a newspaper jutting out. In the paper, Owen reads about a psycho killer with a chainsaw and hook hand being on the loose. Heather dismisses everything as a stunt, but everyone is convinced when it is revealed Chris left behind his hair gel. The scene then cuts to Chris viewing multiple monitors and laughing to himself. He explains to the camera that it is in fact all a stunt, and that this episode is all about watching the campers struggle through a real-life horror movie. Cruel, Chris. Very cruel. Back with the campers, Gwen says that they need a game plan. Heather, convinced everything's fake, takes off alone to the washrooms. The rest of the campers head to the fire pit to discuss strategy, except for Owen and Izzy, who take off into the woods together. At the campfire, Gwen goes over the basic rules of horror movies. Number 1, do not go off on your own. Number 2, do not go into the woods. Number 3, never make out in the woods. At this point, Gwen points out Owen and Izzy's absence, who are in fact breaking all 3 rules. As the two jump into a bush to break rule number 3, the psycho killer with a chainsaw and a hook for a hand, definitely not Chef, emerges from the brush and chases them across the island. Izzy points out the nature of horror movies to extend running scenes in order to make wipeouts that much better. Moments later, Owen does just that, tripping over a rock and falling off a cliff. That makes 4 cliff dives for Owen. Owen hits just about every ledge, a goat, a fire hydrant for some reason, a cactus, some explosives, and a campfire before landing at the bottom, while Izzy watches from the top. Izzy follows suit, landing on Owen as the killer approaches them. Terrified, Owen throws Izzy towards the killer, running away right into Chris's tent. Owen freaks out to Chris, still not connecting the dots that it's all one big stunt. Chef walks in with Izzy, and Owen laughs as the realization sets in that everything is part of their challenge for the week. Izzy doesn't find Owen's sacrifice so funny though. Chris explains that they might be safe, but they are eliminated from the challenge. But hey, at least they get to watch the fun. Back at the fire pit, Gwen has set up a diagram with all the remaining campers as she realizes DJ and Jeff are now missing. The two took a trip to the washroom. DJ tells Jeff he cannot leave, but Chris sets off an ice cream truck noise, drawing the skater dude away. In the washroom, DJ is horrified at the sight of Heather shaving her legs with a face mask on. Letting out the longest scream ever, DJ runs through the door, past the camp, through the woods, off a cliff, through the lake, and back onto the dock before running into Chris's tent, eliminating himself. Chris calms DJ and gives him the rundown before sending Chef back out. Back in the communal washroom, Heather commits a cardinal sin of horror movies despite Gwen's warning, showering. Sure enough, moments later, psycho killer Chef eliminates Heather, taking her back to Chris's tent. Gwen expresses her annoyance in a confessional when she returns to the fire pit to see only Duncan and herself there. She crosses off Lashana from the diagram since she too breaks a horror movie rule and goes off on her own. In the main lodge, Lashana goes to search for food. As she chows down on some brownies, the lights go out and the wind whispers her name. As she makes her escape outside, psycho killer Chef greets her at the door. Lashana eliminated. but not before standing up to the man with the hook hand. In Chris's tent, the campers watch on one of the monitors as Jeff is followed by Shep. Even when his attention is grabbed, Jeff is only concerned about the prospect of ice cream. Once the realization sets in, Jeff lets out a scream and moments later joins the others in the tent. With Duncan and Gwen the final two, the campers watch on as the two discuss the whereabouts of everyone else. Duncan lights some sticks on fire and accidentally sets Gwen's diagram ablaze, prompting her to race for some water. In Gwen's absence, Duncan leaves to confront the killer. At the dock, Duncan approaches Psycho Killer Chef, launching a multitude of items at him to stop him. Chef cuts through everything thrown at him with his chainsaw and lunges at the dock beneath Duncan. Quick thinking, Duncan breaks the weapon and uses it to cut Chef's hook from his hand. Meanwhile, in the main lodge, an annoyed Gwen eats a sandwich. Behind her, someone approaches, though this time it's not Chef dressed up. Back at Chris's tent, Duncan walks into a round of applause from everyone for his performance. Chef follows behind when everyone notices Gwen has been confronted by the real psycho killer. Everyone runs to the lodge to save Gwen, and Chris points out the actual danger could be very bad legally for the show. Gwen is convinced the real killer is just an actor and berates him. Killer raises his hook and chainsaw as the campers run in and tell her he's a real killer. Realizing her life's in actual danger, Gwen kicks the killer several times. Upset by his treatment, the killer lowers his weapons and just leaves the lodge. DJ faints as Duncan gives Gwen a high five. That night, the campers gather around for a campfire ceremony. Gwen is given immunity for subduing an actual escaped psycho, and unfortunately DJ is eliminated from the competition for fleeing from the challenge without the killer even being present. The campers gather for a group hug, including Heather. Oddly, despite their love for DJ, rules are rules. DJ gathers his things, boards the boat of losers, and rides away from the camp. Episode 20 requires the campers to unleash their inner hunter as they traverse the woods seeking out different animals to claim victory. The show opens with Owen seeking retribution from Izzy for his actions last week. As the two converse, Owen gets stringed up by a snare and the other campers are trapped by a dropping cage. A hint to the theme of the week's challenge, hunting and trapping. In the main lodge, Chris explains that the campers are tasked with hunting and trapping a wild animal. Within the 8-hour timer, the campers must return their catch back to camp unharmed, similar to the Rangers and Game Wardens of Canada. The prize for being the first, a meal of all their favorite foods. Outside the boathouse, the campers draw for their animals' assignments. Owen gets chipmunk, Lashana draws frog, Duncan is tasked to trap a raccoon, Gwen gets duck, Jeff pulls beaver, Izzy draws deer, and Heather has to trap a bear. Feeling like her challenge is impossible, Heather nearly declines to even participate, until Chris ups the stakes by saying the loser will have to clean the communal washroom. The campers aren't entirely on their own. They are given 60 seconds to rummage through the boathouse for anything that might help them with their task. After gathering an assortment of items, the campers head off to trap their respective creatures, except for Duncan and Heather. Duncan knows Heather poses a serious threat in the competition and offers to help her in exchange for an alliance into the final two, which Heather declines. In the woods, Gwen uses duck bait from the boathouse to no avail as her target runs away like another beloved animated bird. Meep meep, Lashana approaches a frog, but every time she gets too close, it leaps away, leading to Lashana falling into a deep puddle. Heather gets scared off at a nearby bear den. Duncan angers a group of transforming raccoons. Meanwhile, back near the main lodge, Izzy is hiding in a bush with a tranquilizer gun from the boathouse. At the first sight of movement, she roars from the brush and fires. Unfortunately for her, though, it was no deer she put to sleep, but Chef. Moments later, we join Owen in a tree, manifesting his internal naturalist, calmly speaking to a chipmunk. However, as Owen inches closer, the chipmunk lunges at him, biting his nose, and the branch beneath him collapses. Izzy has further trouble finding a deer in the woods, instead tranquilizing a unicorn. Back at the fire pit, Heather contemplates how to trap a bear as Gwen dashes onto the scene. Throwing the duck bait into the cage, Gwen successfully traps her creature, winning the challenge. Moments later, Duncan arrives with a raccoon clawed onto his head. He pries the animal off and throws it into the cage, successfully catching his quarry. Duncan makes a second alliance proposal to Heather, and with the threat of cleaning the washroom looming, she accepts. While Jeff gets battered by beavers in a dam, Izzy's aim again misses her mark, taking a plane out of the sky instead. Lashana is seen trying a new method to snag her frog, again failing, while Owen chases down his chipmunk. Duncan reveals his plan to Heather for catching a bear. In a nod to the Paintball episode, Duncan prompts Heather to put on the deer costume. Back at camp, Gwen is sitting at a feast table for her meal when Jeff runs onto the scene with the whole beaver dam in his arms, followed by Lashana with her frog. After a mix-up in the woods, Izzy puts Heather to sleep thinking she's a deer, and Owen makes it back to camp with his chipmunk. With Owen and the chipmunk in the cage, the challenge comes to a close, with everyone but Heather and Izzy collecting their animals. All that remains is to decide who leaves the island this week. At the campfire ceremony, marshmallows go to everyone but Izzy and Gwen. Chris lets suspense build before being interrupted by Heather, tells him to just give the marshmallow to Gwen. Not one to get upset at her loss, Izzy jumps from her stump and wishes everyone goodbye, before setting off a smoke bomb and disappearing without a trace from Total Drama Island. Episode 21 sees a temporary return of team action as the campers are split into 3 duos, getting way too close for comfort. The show opens with Chris once again jolting the campers awake by arriving in a grandiose fashion. From his helicopter, Chris expresses just how far the final 6 have come by going over every elimination in the game so far. Once he lands, Chris goes on to explain the premise of the week's challenge. Knowing many of the individuals left have grown to hate one another, Chris explains that the tri-armed triathlon is meant to push the campers over the edge. 3 challenges, 3 teams. The catch, each camper will be handcuffed to their partner the whole time. The winning team gains invincibility from elimination this week. Before beginning the day, each camper jumps into a confessional to discuss their feeling about being so close to winning, with many sick of the camp, some missing home, but all stoked to win. In the main lodge, the campers are divided into their teams and get ready for the first challenge, an always classic speed eating contest. The teams for the day go as such: Gwen and Jeff, Owen and Heather, and lastly, Duncan and Lashana. Before beginning, Chris introduces the Wimp Key, the key out for any team should they choose to use it. Through its use, the 2 campers will be separated from one another. However, they will be eliminated from the challenge. With all the rules set, the campers decide who's eating, who's feeding, and set off. Lashana shovels food into Duncan's mouth at a brisk pace that he can hardly keep up with. Jeff seems to have forgotten that it's a competition and takes multiple breaks between bites to study the taste of each dish, much to Gwen's annoyance. Owen and Heather, on the other hand, seem to be working well together. Owen tells Heather to pick up the pace, which she does, smacking the whole platter of food into Owen's face. Owen successfully downs all the food, winning the challenge for his team. For the next challenge, the campers meet on the beach. Chris explains that they must paddle their canoes over to Bony Island, where there will be a package waiting for them. On the water, Gwen expresses her growing annoyance towards Jeff, as he tells a story about him and his friends back home. Lashana and Duncan continue to butt heads, but Lashana refuses to believe Duncan is as mean as he wants everyone to think. She tells Duncan that she knows what he did for DJ and his bunny. After admitting it's true, Duncan backs off after Lashana says she won't tell anyone. Owen and Heather are the first to arrive on the beach and uncover their package. Inside the package, they find a piece of the idol that Beth took in episode 8. From his helicopter, Chris explains the second part of the challenge. The teams must take their idol piece to the Cave of Treacherous Terror, and to make things harder, they must travel with one person piggybacking. Jeff takes off with Gwen on his back. The 2 stop at a beach where Gwen finds herself confused as to why they're nowhere near the cave. Jeff reveals that he came here to take a picture for his Wawanakwa scrapbook. Snapping a picture, Gwen takes his camera and launches it into the lake, telling Jeff to take things more seriously and stop pretending to be her friend. Jeff says he's not pretending, which Gwen doesn't believe since they come from different crowds of the island. Gwen's attitude towards Jeff changes when he invites her to the next party he's gonna throw after the competition, and the 2 take back off. At the Cave of Treacherous Terrors, Owen and Heather are driven off by a large spider before they can throw their tiki in. Duncan and Lashana show up next, but are repelled by woolly beavers before they can throw their piece into the cave. Jeff and Gwen show up last and throw in their piece, winning the challenge with some uncharacteristic cheering from Gwen. Man, Jeff really knows how to bring out the good energy from people. With Gwen and Jeff on the board, the campers regroup at the main campsite for the final challenge. Chris reveals the wooden heads of their former fellow campers, telling the teams they must assemble the totem pole of shame and humiliation in the orders the others were eliminated. As Heather and Owen look over the heads, Owen is enthralled by even a wooden cutout of the gorgeous Justin, while Heather badmouths her former Alliance members, Beth and Lindsay, and even starts roasting Izzy, angering Owen. Gwen and Jeff have a hard time remembering the difference between Katie and Sadie, and while Duncan and Lashana are working, Chris discovers that Duncan carved his initials into Courtney's figurine, prompting Chris to question Duncan's toughness. Lashana launches one of the heads at Chris in defense of her teammate. All three teams continue working, and when Owen has finally had enough of Heather's bullying, he drags her over for the Wimp Key. But before they can get there, Chris has Lashana and Duncan's arms raised as the winners of the third challenge. With each team having 1 point, nobody earns invincibility, meaning anyone can be voted off the island. At the campfire ceremony, marshmallows go to everyone but Gwen and Jeff. Believing she's been eliminated, Gwen gets up to leave. However, it is in fact Jeff that's been voted off. Completely surprised by the revelation, Gwen questions everyone's motives, saying that Jeff is the nicest guy, which is exactly why he was voted off. For the popular vote in the final, Jeff is a surefire win and therefore too big a threat. With his head held high and no hard feelings, Jeff makes for the dock of shame, bringing us down to our final 5. The episode opens with Chris jet skiing up to a beautiful resort, Playa de Losers, an all-inclusive luxury resort that the losing campers are sent to after being eliminated from the island. Obviously, while lounging around in paradise, everyone enjoys the amenities provided. Everyone except for Harold, who, if you recall, tampered with votes to get Courtney voted out. Now, with the both of them on Playa de Losers, Courtney is out to get him. It's not just Harold Courtney's after, though. She tells that she is currently assessing her options to take legal action against the whole competition. After getting everyone's inputs on what life has been like post-elimination, Chris gets into the good stuff as everyone gives their thoughts on the final 5 competitors. To the surprise of no one, Heather is essentially unanimously hated. Eva has some choice words about Heather that she says directly into the camera. Izzy thinks she's a psycho, which says a lot coming from her. Courtney doesn't approve her tactics, and so on. Long story short, Heather has made enemies of just about everyone, and when the popular vote comes to play in the finale, it's unlikely Heather will have anyone on her side. When it comes to Duncan, Courtney very clearly expresses her wish for him to win thanks to their budding relationship. Courtney tells the camera not to tell anyone, but the campers all gather around and reveal that Courtney made it incredibly obvious she had a crush on him. DJ and Bridget give their positive opinions of Duncan, talking about how tough he is, but that he also has that subdued niceness. On the other hand, Lindsay and Harold wouldn't consider Duncan a good guy, especially Harold, who remembers all the torture he endured. Katie and Sadie talk about how much fun they had with Owen, even though he was a little harsh during the Dodgeball tournament. The conversation quickly shifts over to Gwen, however, when Trent chimes in. Courtney doesn't think Gwen's a team player, and Lindsay talks about some of the harsh words Gwen's launched at her. Despite the occasional meanness Gwen showed her, Lindsay does really appreciate the prank Gwen pulled on Heather. Bridget then goes on to talk about how nice both Gwen and Lashana were to her when the teams merged, prompting everyone to discuss how they feel about Lashana. Harold, of course, has nothing but good things to say about Lashana. The same goes for just about everyone, with Courtney, Katie, Sadie, and even Noah saying they loved her. As night falls, the campers all gather around the pool with Trent strumming away on his guitar. The former competitors all discuss who they think should win the prize at the end, when Chris comes up and tells them they will be voting for the next one to be eliminated from the challenge. Chris starts by asking Katie and Sadie who they would like to have with them at the Playa de Losers, and thanks to his wordplay, the two say Lashana. Courtney then chimes in by saying that they shouldn't vote for Lashana if they like her, but because she said the name Lashana, it counted as a vote. Lindsay then says out loud that she's not voting for Lashana, counting the vote for Lashana. Izzy shouts at everyone not to say Lashana, which then goes on to count as a vote. A parrot then says her name, counting as a vote, then Trent, then the parrot again, making 3 additional votes. Yikes, this does not bode well for Lashana. Oops. Man, what a way to go out. Back on the island, Chef drags a completely shocked Lashana onto the boat of losers. Chris then jumps in to sign off the show as Lashana is left speechless at her elimination. Episode 23, once again, takes the campers away from the island, allegedly. Thanks to a massive rainstorm, the final 4 must take all they've learned about survival and apply it in what may or may not be a real-life scenario. The show opens just like any other day. The campers are hanging around their cabins, passing the time until their next challenge. Gwen and Heather butt heads as always, while Duncan carves away at a stick, crafting a makeshift spear. Meanwhile, Owen spends some time in the confessional stall, letting all his thoughts out. Thanks to the rainstorm, all activities are canceled for the week, and Chris announces that the campers are to report to the arts and craft tent in the morning. As the sun rises the next day, Chris and Chef can't seem to find the campers or even their cabins. Moments later, Duncan, Gwen, Heather, and their cabins are revealed to have been washed away during the massive downpour. Owen, on the other hand, must have spent the night in the confessional, as both he and the stall are floating alone in the water. Duncan, Gwen, and Heather soon wash up on a different island to try and get their bearings. Heather is convinced this is all just another one of Chris's challenges to test their survival skills. Duncan and Gwen, on the other hand, think they're actually stranded. Duncan suggests staying put until a search party arrives, while Gwen thinks they need to build a raft and paddle back to camp. Chris makes a rare appearance in the confessional stall, stating that the campers are, in fact, on their own. As a matter of fact, throughout the episode, Chris chimes in quite often, commenting on the different skulls, skeletons, and palm trees, stating they're all props left over from an old dinosaur movie. Heather's right. This whole ordeal is just an elaborate scheme set up by Chris. Nonetheless, the campers can't be 100% sure they aren't in real danger, and Owen takes the island castaway thing pretty hard. After only 9 minutes of isolation, Owen's mind is already starting to slip. As he sits beneath a palm tree, enjoying a feast of coconuts, Owen contemplates his loneliness with a new friend of his, Mr. Coconut. Literally just a coconut, but to Owen, a real person, the only friend he's got. You know, after being stranded for a whopping 9 minutes. As a side note, an interesting point from a technical perspective, when Owen says it's been a grueling 9 minutes of isolation, the episode has ran for a total of 9 minutes, not counting the recap at the beginning. Back with the other 3 campers, Heather has uncovered a treehouse, and the trio debate on what their next move should be. With everyone having a differing opinion on what's going on, they decide to split up. Heather takes shelter in the treehouse, Gwen goes to build a raft, and Duncan takes his bow and arrow to hunt for food. Meanwhile, Chris and Chef have made their way to the secret production camp on the island. Here, the two are set to enjoy some brunch, heralded by Chef blowing a conch shell. The sound of the shell rings so loud that it reaches and frightens the campers. Gwen decides to set off on her newly completed raft, accompanied by Duncan, who offers up an egg he found while out hunting for food. The two set off, leaving Heather behind on the island. In a confessional, Heather does her best to curry favor with the eliminated campers by apologizing profusely to Lindsay and Beth. Owen sets out from the confessional stall. With a loincloth, headdress, and war paint, he has completely embraced his shipwrecked surroundings. He comes across the treehouse, frightening Heather, who doesn't recognize him at first. On the water, Gwen and Duncan row in a circle, arriving at the shoreline that Owen landed on. Moments later, a bone-chilling screech interrupts the arguing campers, and a massive pterodactyl lunges at Duncan for its egg. The prehistoric bird lifts Duncan with its talons, and Gwen tries to save him with a rope, only to be lifted with him. As Owen comes to his senses at the treehouse, Gwen and Duncan fall from the pterodactyl's claws, landing right next to the others. With everyone reunited, Owen gives a big group hug, but is interrupted by a large python that scares the campers into the treehouse. In the treehouse, the campers find themselves contemplating whether or not these are going to be their last moments. Owen suggests that everyone must confess their greatest sins. Off camera, the group seems to learn some deep, dark secrets about one another. Following their confessions, Owen spots some nearby smoke, and the group decides to leave to stop whoever is messing with them on the island. Everyone covers their face with war paint. Owen drops Mr. Coconut on the head of the python beneath them, and the campers set off towards the billow of smoke. The campers arrive, plungers and sticks drawn, and discover Chris and Chef's secret campsite. As the realization sets in that the campers were right about the corner from safety, the rain comes back. Despite the fact that this episode didn't have an official challenge, there's still a campfire ceremony that night. Chris holds his usual platter lined with marshmallows. Weirdly enough, though, there's 4 marshmallows and 4 campers. Chris hands them out to Duncan, Gwen, Heather, and Owen. But then, who's eliminated? That's right, Mr. Coconut enters the fray and is immediately eliminated. Owen screams in despair as Chris throws the coconut onto the dock of shame. Well, that's quite the twist. Looks like we're still down to the final 4, and as the episode ends, the group agrees that their confessions will stay between them forever. Episode 24 brings us back to Camp Wawanakwa and back to basics with a traditional elimination challenge. However, this time around, there's a notable absence requiring Chef to take over for the day. The campers open the episode in the woods, waking up from their bunks away from the cabins. Chef rides in on a helicopter and gives a quick and brutal rundown of the challenge. Simply enough, the campers must make their way out of the woods and back to camp. Duncan and Owen are Team 1, Gwen and Heather Team 2. Duncan feigns cowardice, pretending to beg Chef not to leave them. In reality, Duncan cleverly used this as an opportunity to nick the night vision goggles from him. Chef takes his leave on the helicopter as Duncan and Owen dash into the woods. The guys assess their surroundings and their supplies. Quickly determining which direction they're looking, Duncan is certain he'll be able to lead Owen in the right direction. Owen's unsure thanks to the compass on their map being upside down. The girls, meanwhile, use the compass that came with their pack and head north to the camp. Duncan and Owen scale a cliffside while discussing the potential of Sasquatchanakwa getting them. When they get to the top, Duncan sees the girls and teases them, thinking they're going the wrong way. When Gwen retorts by proving they're going the right way because of the compass, Duncan panics and checks his map. Realizing that they are, in fact, going the wrong way, the guys determine the fastest way down is to jump the cliff into the river. That makes 6 plummets from a cliff for Owen at this point. That has to be a record or something. After passing the girls from the river, a small montage ensues of the two teams trapping and stealing from one another. This back and forth goes on well into the night, and when the girls come across a giant footprint in the dirt, they think it's just another trap. Gwen jumps into the brush, only to find a confused Sasquatchanakwa. Everyone starts running, including the massive Sasquatchanakwa. They run into the boys, who also begin running, and everyone ends up in a cave to seek shelter. Unfortunately for them, though, the cave is full of bats, and everyone quickly makes their exit. After finding safety and setting up a fire, the campers all settle in for the night. The following morning, though, the guys are horrified to find out the girls left early, taking all the supplies with them. Just when the guys think all hope is lost, a whiff of sticky buns approaches Owen's nose. Like a bloodhound, Owen tracks where the smell is coming from and dashes for the source. He dashes past the girls as they approach camp, but unfortunately for Duncan, Owen runs right past the totem pole that determines victory. Heather and Gwen touch the totem pole and claim victory. At the campfire ceremony, there is no Chris. Instead, Chef alone is set to reveal who leaves the island. Since Heather and Gwen won, they get invincibility, meaning it's down to Owen and Duncan. In a fashion that would make Chris proud, Chef lets anticipation build before throwing the final marshmallow to Owen. Chef marches Duncan down the dock of shame as he says his goodbyes. With Duncan carted off on the boat of losers, the final 3 sit around the campfire and take in how close they are to victory, and how close we are to the end of Total Drama Island. Chris returns for episode 25 to put his final 3 competitors through the ringer in an extremely dangerous, extremely gross game of truth or dare. The catch, truth is not an option. Chris welcomes the campers to the semifinal with an all-you-can-eat pancake breakfast. While everyone eats their breakfast, we get to see everyone's thoughts about making it to the semifinals through a series of video journals in the confessionals. Heather and Gwen give their thoughts about what they're going to do when they win, and the absolutely horrid time they had at camp. On the other hand, Owen, as good as humored as ever, isn't concerned about winning. Instead, Owen's just psyched about the pancake breakfast. At the amphitheater, Heather, Owen, and Gwen sit at game show tables while Chris gives the rundown of the challenge. An extreme conjoining of truth or dare and spin the bottle, Chris reveals a spinning wheel with the faces of the eliminated campers. With the producers out of ideas, Chris says they pulled ideas for sick and insane dares from the eliminated contestants. The game goes like this. Heather, Gwen, and Owen will be assigned a random dare from one of the eliminated campers through the spinning wheel. They can either take the dare themselves and get a freebie, meaning they can pass up a dare with no repercussions, or they can give the dare to one of the other competitors. Should anyone refuse a dare, they are immediately eliminated from the competition. That's right, this is sudden death. Fair warning, some of these dares get gross. Skip to here if you don't want to see any of it. With the rules established, Gwen spins first, getting Duncan's dare to lick Owen's armpit. Everyone recoils in disgust, and Gwen gives the dare to Heather, who completes the task, succeeding? I don't know, I wouldn't consider that a win. Heather's next and spins Ezekiel, who dares the competitor to chew their own toenail slowly. That's just foul. Heather immediately gives the dare to Gwen, who also completes the task. Unfortunately, Owen's up and spins Beth's dare. Beth dares them to chew Harold's pre-chewed gum. In a surprise twist, Owen takes the dare himself and succeeds, earning himself a freebie. Hey, we warned you, this episode really pushes the campers to their limits of gross. Gwen spins next, getting Cody's dare. Cody dares them to drop a tray of ice into their pants and let them melt. Gwen takes the dare and wins a freebie. Refusing to fall behind, Heather says she's taking the next dare no matter what it is. Bold move, Heather. She spins, receiving Tyler's dare to eat jelly from Owen's belly button. Thankfully not shown on camera, Heather completes her dare and wins the coveted freebie, but clearly at great cost. Heather has to spend some time on life support. Owen spins next, taking Izzy's dare to give a sleeping bear a purple nurple. Owen heads to a nearby cave and returns battered and covered in filth, but successful, winning yet another freebie. Heather, Gwen, and Owen go through a staggering 60 more rounds of foul and dangerous dares, most of which are done off camera, all of which Owen takes for himself, earning a massive 20 freebies. Gwen decides it's time to end the game and strikes a deal with Owen to take down Heather. In return, Gwen promises half of her winnings, or a box of donuts if she loses. Owen accepts and gives half of his freebies to Gwen. Uh-oh. This does not bode well for Heather. But let's not forget all the horrible things she did during the competition. You know what they say about karma. The show then cuts to a montage of Heather undergoing more dares, drinking a puree of Chef's mystery meat, swimming with leeches, pretending to be a chicken, slapping herself over and over, eating a live cockroach, kissing Chef's dirty sock, and being fired into a pile of manure. Retribution. Then comes Lindsay's dare. Heather feels a sense of relief, thinking Lindsay can't come up with anything that bad, and she's not completely wrong. All Heather has to do is shave her head. After everything else, this must be the easiest to accept. But Heather is mortified at the idea of being bald on live television. Heather sits in the barber's chair contemplating what's at stake, $100,000 or a shaved head. As the chef approaches, Heather clearly makes her decision when she kicks the razor from Chef's hand. The razor goes flying into the air, coming down and landing directly on her head. Heather rises from the ground with patchy hair, disgusted when Chris announces Heather to be eliminated, since she didn't actually accept the dare. Heather lets out a frustrated scream, and moments later rides off on the boat of losers, eliminated from the challenge. Finally! Bet all the skipping people are glad they didn't have to see any of that, huh? With the finale right around the corner, episode 26 takes a quick break from the drama. Instead, episode 26 gives a rundown of the events during the season. No one's eliminated this episode, but it does offer a substantial amount of drama as we relive the highs, the lows, the love, and the hate from the last 25 episodes. Memories. But hey, the finale's next. Will it be Gwen or Owen taking home the gold? Find out on the next episode of Total Drama Island. I've been wanting to do that all season. The very last day of the competition. It's finale time, and it'll either be Gwen or Owen going home with $100,000. Chris opens the show by showing the final thoughts from Gwen and Owen about the competition. Owen shows extreme excitement about his time at camp, and Gwen shows quite the opposite. At the amphitheater, Chris brings in all the other campers who were eliminated. Everyone takes a seat in the stands, each picking a side for who they all want to see win the challenge. It splits just about down the middle for each finalist. Chris then gives Owen and Gwen the opportunity to give some words about what they would do with the money if they win. Gwen starts by saying she'd stay true to her word and split her winnings with Owen. With her half, she would go traveling and pay for her tuition for university. Gwen's answer, while sweet, bores Chris and the other campers. Owen, on the other hand, promises the biggest, coolest party ever with everyone from the show. The campers on the bleachers let out a cheer for Owen, and all but 4 of them move over to Owen's side. With sides chosen and speeches made, it's time for the final challenge, the rejected Olympic relay. While dressed as a chicken or a cow, Gwen and Owen must climb to the top of a pole and grab the flag. Next, they have to cross a 300-meter balance beam while carrying an eagle's egg. Doesn't sound so bad so far, but with Chris McLean, there will always be an element of extreme danger. The balance beam reaches across a ravine, and beneath it, the freshwater man-eating sharks make their return. After this, Gwen and Owen only have a long-distance run to the finish line and $100,000. The two finalists set off and approach their first obstacle. Trent accompanies Gwen, and though she's forgiven him for the debacle with Heather, she shuts down his advances. As she tries to climb the pole, she remarks that it is super slippery, making it hard for her to reach the top. Of course, with Heather present, things aren't going to be easy for Gwen. Turns out Heather greased the pole before the competition started. Nonetheless, Gwen makes it to the top thanks to Trent cleaning the pole with his shirt, and she continues. Meanwhile, the big guy Owen has a hard time climbing the pole, but Izzy, Heather, and Jeff do what they can to help him out. Owen makes it to the top, but has to hurry since Gwen has taken the lead. Gwen approaches the ravine, and things come full circle as Gwen looks down below and says, "I'm going to die now. I'm going to freaking die." The same thing her opposite, Owen, said during the first challenge. Memories. Gwen sets off down the balance beam, and moments later Owen joins her. Then Owen and Gwen freeze and shudder at the sound of a bird screeching. Two eagle parents swoop in, trying to get their eggs back. The finalists hurry their pace across the ravine, but Heather has other plans. Near the end of the balance beam, Heather approaches with the irresistible Justin. The model takes off his shirt and puts Owen, Gwen, the eagles, and the sharks in a tramp. Thanks to some intervention by Trent, Gwen is able to refocus and make her way off the balance beam and onto the final leg. Owen follows suit, and it seems like anyone's game. At this point, it's worth noting that Heather really pulled all the stops to try and prevent Gwen from winning. Earlier in the day, Heather left a cupcake baked with a laxative for Gwen with a note, saying it was from Trent. Unfortunately for Heather, though, Gwen never ate the cupcake. Instead, the laxatives finally kick in during the final leg of the race, and Owen runs to the closest outhouse he can find, which is, sadly, the confessional stall. Yeah, I hope they burned that footage forever. With Owen preoccupied, Gwen takes the lead. Along the way, Gwen continues to shut down Trent, but as an act of love, Trent picks up a massive boulder that he takes with him on the run. Owen's back in the race, but still behind. Gwen and Trent begin their final approach to the finish line as Owen slumps over, exhausted. Just when all hope seems lost for Owen, Izzy arrives at the finish line with fresh baked brownies, and Lindsay follows behind with an electric fan. When they turn on the fan and blow the aroma of the brownies towards Owen, he finds renewed life and dashes towards the smell. Owen barrels down the final few meters, racing past Gwen and crossing the finish line. Cheers roar from the eliminated campers, excited for both Owen and the upcoming party. Back on the course, Trent consoles Gwen, and the two head for the finish line as an official couple. And finally, all the campers gather around the fire pit for the final campfire ceremony. Chris announces Owen the winner of Total Drama Island, gives him his victory check and the final marshmallow as everyone cheers him on. With his victory solidified, Owen, Duncan, and Jeff carry Chris to the dock of shame and throw him in the lake. Chef approaches, laughing with the guys that has soaked Chris. Then the boys shift their attention and chase Chef around the camp, saying he's next. Heather scowls at the campers enjoying themselves, but Gwen nudges her, and Heather admits that she's glad to see Chris get dunked. The camera pans out on Camp Wawanakwa, marking the very end of Total Drama Island. Or is it? As a quick side note, there were different endings to the show when it first aired. The vast majority of broadcasts showed Owen's victory. However, viewers in Poland, Romania, and Sweden, as well as those that watched TBS or Boomerang in Latin America and Brazil, were given a different ending that saw Gwen claim victory. However, no matter which ending you saw, there was always a post-season 45-minute special episode. We returned to Playa de Losers, where all the campers are enjoying themselves and hanging out, excited that the show is finally over. The specifics of this opening scene differ slightly depending on who won in the previous episode, but mostly plays out the same. Tyler and Cody throw some frisbee. Katie and Sadie drool over Justin, who doubles his speaking lines in the whole season by saying he's signed on to a modeling agency.
Signing up with 3 modeling agencies.
Meanwhile, Lashana shuts down Harold's advances, and Gwen shows some pictures of her friends back home. The campers all just enjoy hanging out with one another without the threat of elimination or prospect of large amounts of money looming over them. Cue Chris McLean and Chef Hatchet. Chris waltzes in with a briefcase weighing him down, and Chef takes the check from the winner. Chris goes on to announce a brand new challenge, a race for $1 million. In his briefcase, Chris claims to have the $1 million. The challenge is to find the briefcase, and the first camper or group of campers to arrive on the dock of shame with the case win. The campers all look on with a scowl, completely over Chris's antics and ready to be done with the games. All except for the excitable Owen, who finds himself as the only competitor interested in competing. Owen runs off towards camp while everyone else stays behind. Chris tells them that Owen is about to win the easiest $1 million in television history. As Owen's cheers echo throughout the resort, everyone soon gives in and makes a mad dash for the woods, resulting in a massive pileup. Soon everyone divides themselves into teams and the race for $1 million is on. 2 hours pass without anyone finding the suitcase with the money, so Chris gives a hint over the intercom, saying it's just hanging around. Justin wanders the woods with Katie and Sadie and has no luck at finding the suitcase. Noah, Eva, and Izzy surmise the suitcase must be hanging from a tree. When Izzy thinks she's found the case, Courtney shows up with Duncan, hoping to take the prize out from under the other team. Beth, Lindsay, and Ezekiel walk directly under the suitcase without realizing it, followed by Jeff and Bridget, who are too preoccupied with making out to realize it's right above them. The case remains hanging from the tree branch until the team of Owen, DJ, Cody, and Tyler wrangle it down. However, with there being 4 members, the group argues about who should hold on to the case, worried that someone will try and sneak off with the money. To remedy this, they tie themselves together. The case switches hands when Owen has to relieve himself in a bush. While the guys try and endure the smelliness of Owen's bathroom break, Harold sneaks in and takes it for himself and Heather. The unlikely pairing soon part ways when Heather betrays Harold on top of the 1,000-foot cliff from the beginning of the season. Unfortunately for her, though, the makeshift hang glider falls apart the second she jumps off. Heather falls from the cliff and onto a beaver dam, losing the case in the river. Over the intercom, Chris gives out a new hint. The case is wet. In a show of never-before-seen intelligence, Lindsay declares that the case has to be in the water. Her team runs to the nearby beach and discusses what they would do with their share, and moments later, the case floats by. Lindsay picks up the case, only for it to be fished away by Duncan on the other side of the water. After securing the package, an alligator rises from the water, snapping it directly from Duncan's reel. Then, in a show of immense strength and toughness, Duncan dives in to wrestle the alligator in the water and wins. Yet despite Duncan's immense show of fortitude, a sprained ankle proves his downfall as his sweetheart Courtney takes the case and runs without him. Before she can make her great escape, however, Izzy falls from nowhere and the case changes hands yet again. Izzy, Eva, and Noah make their mad dash through the woods when they come across the most impossible challenge on the show, Justin's good looks. Having left Katie and Sadie in a cave, Justin ventured out on his own to find the case, using his pretty privilege to get his way. And things are no different here with Izzy and Eva, who willingly hand over the case. Chris then gives his final hint for the whereabouts of the briefcase. The case is now somewhere beautiful and headed towards camp. While Justin is off using his good looks to his advantage, Courtney has seemed to find her inner rebellious fire as she climbs a wall at the border of the island that leads to civilization. In an attempt to wrangle the wild Courtney, a cameraman reaches down with a boom mic from a hot air balloon. Courtney then latches onto the boom mic, allowing her to climb up and hijack the hot air balloon and make her way back to camp. In the woods, the group of DJ, Owen, Cody, and Tyler find Justin walking back to camp. In a clever move, Cody distracts Justin by saying there's paparazzi around. The guys then barrel through Justin, taking the case with them. The group makes a run for it, and for the 7th time, Owen finds himself on top of a cliff, about to take another plunge. However, just as they begin to fall, they latch onto Courtney's hot air balloon. Owen manages to pull them all up into the basket, and they all ride back towards camp, locked in a stalemate with Courtney. Things are heating up as everyone converges on one location, so strap in. On the ground, Jeff, Bridget, Katie, and Sadie find themselves being chased towards camp by a bull moose, and the trio of Trent, Lashana, and Gwen make their way back in a hijacked ATV. After making amends, Harold and Heather arrive in camp on a canoe, just as Lashana's group arrives on the ATV. Lashana runs down Heather and Harold, driving the 3 of them into the lake. Meanwhile, Izzy, Eva, and Noah wait in the boathouse, preparing for Justin's arrival. The campers on the run from the moose make their way up the pool ladder to escape. Moments later, the guys in the hot air balloon find they have no other choice but to jump to escape the bear climbing up, also ending on the pool ladder. Courtney then joins them soon after when the bear scares her away. The briefcase then falls and lands in front of the communal washroom in Lindsay's hands. Justin arrives on scene, jumping from a plane and landing right in front of Lindsay, who hands the case over. Eva and Noah dump water on Justin's perfect hair. Izzy then makes her move, taking the case and running towards the dock. Phew. So it's looking like Izzy's a surefire win, right? Well, it's in the next few moments that things really start to fall apart. Izzy trips and the briefcase goes flying towards the dock. Trent, Gwen, Lindsay, and Beth start running for it. The diving board collapses after Justin's unmanned plane struck it and the campers topple with it. Cody, Tyler, Courtney, Katie, and Sadie all fall into the green jelly below, falling behind, while all the others are launched towards the dock, using the diving board as a sled. The sledding campers barrel past Justin, snagging his parachute and dragging him along with them. Duncan, having gotten the better of the bull moose, rides it towards the dock where the moose bucks him off and towards the water. Moments later, Owen, DJ, Lashana, Jeff, Bridget, Duncan, Heather, Harold, Trent, Gwen, Justin, Lindsay, Beth, and Izzy all collide at the end of the dock, crashing into the water with the briefcase. A shark then surfaces and eats the briefcase, meaning nobody wins. All of that, and no one walks away with any money. What a bummer. All's not lost, however. Chris arrives on the dock and announces that all 14 campers that crashed into the water are tied and can compete for the million again in Season 2. Chris then goes on to announce that in 2 days, the qualifying campers are to report to a new location for new challenges to compete for $1 million on Total Drama Action. Stay tuned for that one.